Chapter 819. The Lady of Earth transformed into reincarnation, and her merit was boundless. Some people also suggested counting from the day Feng Zichen set up the world tree. The appearance of the world tree marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Eldritch world. In short, there were all kinds of suggestions, and they all had sufficient reasons. Everyone was arguing over this. At a certain moment, everyone finally reached a consensus. They would count from the day Great Emperor Ziwei ascended to the boundless starry sky. When Great Emperor Ziwei first appeared in the world, he appeared in front of the world as a savior. But this time, not only did he restore the already broken and boundless starry sky, he even made it undergo a transformation and take a step closer. In terms of merit, Great Emperor Ziwei was the most outstanding in the Eldritch world. No one could compare to him. It was most appropriate to count the day he ascended to the boundless starry sky as the beginning of the era of the three realms. In the face of everyone's suggestions, Feng Zichen wanted to reject them. The status of Great Emperor Ziwei had already reached the peak of the Eldritch world. It was not inferior to the status of Dao Ancestor. He no longer needed other honors to improve his status. He should give this honor to someone else. However, in the end, Feng Zichen accepted it. This was because he realized that it was not suitable for him to give this honor to anyone. If he gave it to Goddess Nuwa, he would offend Goddess Hutu. If he gave it to Goddess Hutu, he would offend Nuwa. If he gave it to Gaochen, he would be giving it to himself. This would seem a little pretentious. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought about it and decided to show the demeanor of a great senior and give it to a special living being. After the establishment of the three realms, the first living being born would also be the first innate God fiend. Anything that was related to being first would become extraordinary. The heavenly secrets showed that after the establishment of the three realms, the first living being born would be a top-notch innate God fiend. This living being was born with a wisp of the three realms' destiny. It gathered the fortune of heaven, earth, and people in its body. It could be said to be the son of the era. In the future, it was destined to become a great cultivator. It was even possible for it to reach the primordial chaos realm. For details, he could refer to the first connate life form of the primordial world, Dao Ancestor Hongjun, and the first postnatal life form of the primordial world, Feng Zichen. Both of them were number one and had achieved unimaginable achievements. That living being was born from the karmic luck of the three dimensions. Even though it couldn't compare to these two great figures, it still couldn't be underestimated. After all, the era of the three dimensions was the only era since the primeval times had been split open, and it contained unimaginable karmic luck and fortune. This living being was the child of karmic luck, and being born in this era was already bound to be extraordinary. Therefore, Feng Zichen decided to form a good relationship with him and let him have this special honor. The day he was born would be the first year of the three realms, the beginning of the three realms era. It was a very good idea, a very good reason, and it even created the image of a reliable senior. When that living being succeeded in its cultivation and understood the cause and effect, it would definitely be very grateful to Feng Zichen. This special honor wasn't just a special honor. It represented a strand of the karmic luck of the three dimensions. If there were no real benefits, why would everyone fight for this? If that living being received benefits from Feng Zichen, it would form a karmic relationship with him, and he would have to pay it back in the future. Feng Zichen's calculations were very precise, and he definitely wouldn't suffer any losses. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen's idea was very good, but once he said his suggestion, it was rejected by everyone. He was just a newborn god fiend. Even if his aptitude was extraordinary, how could he be compared to everyone present? If they gave that special honor to him, where would their dignity go? The reason was very simple. It was the above sentence that dispelled all of Feng Zichen's plans, and he had no choice but to accept this special honor. When his plan failed, Feng Zichen sighed slightly and didn't take it too seriously. He just felt a little regretful. Little did he know that Feng Zichen's lack of persistence made him regret what happened next. After some calculations, Feng Zichen realized that 100 years and 30 days later would be the 10,000th anniversary of his unsealing of Zhousing. No one objected, and they all nodded in agreement. Then Feng Zichen set this day as the first day of the 3 dimensions, the beginning of the 3 dimensions era. In the blink of an eye, that day came. On this day, everyone worked together to summon the long river of time and space and set up a huge stone tablet in it. The words "first year of the 3 dimensions" were written on it, and it was fixed on this time and space node. At this point, the Eldritch world had entered the 3 dimensions era. At this point, the matter was considered to be over. Everyone should leave the Purple Cloud Palace and return home. But at this moment, an inexplicable throbbing suddenly came from the Eldritch world, attracting everyone's attention. Worried that there would be a problem with the Eldritch world, everyone didn't dare to hesitate. They immediately released their divine senses and crossed the endless chaotic void, looking towards the Eldritch world. Then, everyone saw a strange scene. On the Eldritch world, regardless of whether it was the connate myriad Tao or the postnatal myriad Tao, all of them appeared. They jumped happily between heaven and earth, as if they were extremely excited. After silently calculating, everyone knew the origin of this phenomenon. It turned out that the first connate god fiend of the 3 dimensions was about to be born. This phenomenon was to celebrate his imminent birth. The old doubts were resolved, but new doubts appeared in everyone's minds. What was the origin of that connate god fiend? Why could it cause such a commotion? TSK, the commotion caused by this birth is really not small. I wonder if there was such a phenomenon when Taoist 3 Pure Ones was born. Feng Zichen turned his head and asked the 3 Pure Ones after looking at the phenomenon in the heavenly Tao. The Grand Pure One thought for a moment and replied, "It should be about the same. Even if the phenomenon of this connate god fiend's birth can't be compared to the 3 of us, it's not much worse." Hiss! The moment the Grand Pure One said that, everyone gasped in shock. The phenomenon when a connate god fiend was born could probably represent his talent and achievements. The phenomenon when this connate god fiend was born could actually catch up to the 3 Pure Ones. Didn't that mean that his future achievements were second only to the 3 Pure Ones? Although everyone had already overestimated the new connate god fiend, they still did not expect him to be so talented. Curious, Saint Xuan Ti said, "Let's not stay here and watch. Let's go and take a look ourselves. How extraordinary is that connate god fiend to be able to produce such a phenomenon." After saying that, Saint Xuan Ti took the lead and walked towards the primordial world without waiting for anyone to answer. Seeing that, everyone hurriedly said, "Let's go, let's go." Looking at the figure of Saint Xuan Ti leaving first, the Grand Pure One shook his head and smiled. Suddenly, he took out the connate cardinal treasure, the Taiji painting, and turned into a white jade bridge that reached the sky. He carried everyone and rushed towards the primordial world at an extremely fast speed. "Fellow Taoists, let's go." When everyone surpassed Saint Xuan Ti, the Grand Pure One's voice sounded in everyone's eyes. "Fast, very fast, very fast." As expected of the heaven-opening cardinal treasure, the speed of the Taiji painting was actually 30% faster than Feng Zichen's speed. Seeing that he had been surpassed, Saint Xuan Ti was not angry. Instead, he laughed and turned into a ray of light. He landed on the white jade bridge and rushed to the primordial world with everyone. At that moment, the 8 saints of the primordial world and many great mystical abilities stepped on the white jade bridge and rushed to the primordial world. Such a scene was enough to be recorded in the annals of the primordial world and make future generations have endless imagination. Looking at the smiles on everyone's faces, those who did not know would think that their relationship was very similar. It was the long-awaited peace. Silently, the heavenly Tao appeared and froze the scene, as if it had turned into eternity. As I wrote, I suddenly realized that this paragraph had the flavor of a grand finale. Of course, I have no intention of ending it. If I end it here, you will probably tear me apart. I'm just lamenting. Although the birthplace of the Khanate god-fiend was very mysterious, with everyone working together, who in the primordial world could hide from them, therefore it was easy for everyone to find the place where the Khanate god-fiend was born. Yes, it was indeed very special. It was so special that after everyone arrived, the smiles on their faces disappeared. They walked forward with an extremely solemn expression. There was a faint gray fog here. There was chaos chi rising and chaos baneful chi surging. There were piles of gravel on the ground. There was divine power circulating on the gravel. Although it was very faint, it had a supreme charm. At the same time, an extremely distant aura naturally filled the place. Indeed, this place was very ancient. It could be traced back to the beginning of the world. This was the ruins of the original Mount Bujo, where the backbone of the great god Pango was. This was the birthplace of the number 1 Khanate god-fiend in the 3 realms. Mount Bujo was such a special place. It was the original heavenly pillar of the primordial world and the supreme divine mountain that suppressed the chaos demon god. His ruins were filled with the aura of destruction and the resentment of the chaos demon god. Logically speaking, there should be no living creatures born here. However, an Khanate god-fiend was born here. Then this living being must be extremely special. With indescribable feelings, everyone came to the deepest part of the Mount Bujo ruins and saw the Khanate god-fiend that was about to be born. It was an Khanate god-fiend. It was 36 feet and 5 inches tall and 24 feet in circumference. 36 feet and 5 inches tall, according to the 365 degrees of the heavenly cycle. 24 feet in circumference, according to the 24 chi of the political calendar. There were 9 orifices and 8 holes on it, according to the 9 palaces and 8 trigrams. There was nothing wrong with this. Most Khanate god-fiends looked like this. Everyone was knowledgeable and had naturally seen the appearance of other Khanate god-fiends. Naturally, they were not surprised. However, when they looked down and saw the scene below the Khanate god-fiend, everyone's expression changed. Below the Khanate god-fiend was a huge blood pool. This was nothing. The key was the blood at the bottom of the blood pool. Everyone recognized that it was their blood, as well as the blood of the chaos demon gods. The blood in the blood pool was the blood of Feng Zichen, the 3 pure ones, Goddess Hutu, Great Emperor Ziwei, Nuwa, and the 2 sages of the West. These were the blood of the Orthodox Pangu and the saints. Their blood only occupied half of the blood pool. The remaining blood emitted a faint divine light, with the great Tao rules looming and chaotic aura lingering on it. It was the blood of the chaos demon gods. Where did the blood come from? Everyone remembered that at the end of the gods' investiture tribulation, they had a great battle with the 7 chaos demon gods. Although they won that battle and successfully sealed the chaos demon gods in the 5 divine lands and the heaven realm. However, how could they not pay a price for the battle with the chaos demon gods? They were all injured and lost a lot of blood. The blood in the blood pool was left by them at that time. For some reason, the blood shed by the crowd and the chaos fiend god gathered together and turned into a blood pool. Then it came to the relic of Mount Bujo and gave birth to a Khanate divine fetus. Listen to this, what a coincidence! If no one was secretly playing tricks, Feng Zichen could twist Saint Juan Ti's head off and kick it like a ball. On the side, Saint Juan Ti touched his neck subconsciously, then looked around in confusion and said, "Fellow Taoists, I'm afraid this Khanate god-fiend is extraordinary." It was more than extraordinary. He was much more extraordinary than everyone had imagined. When they saw this Khanate god-fiend being born in Mount Bujo, everyone had tried their best to imagine how extraordinary he was. However, they still underestimated him. If this identity could really be born, it would not be weaker than Feng Zichen. The first Khanate god-fiend in the three realms was already extraordinary enough. However, he was also an Khanate god-fiend born from the fusion of the blood of a saint and the blood of a chaos demon god. That was the most special thing about him. What were Feng Zichen and the others? They were Pengu. After this Khanate god-fiend obtained their blood, he also obtained the blood of the chaos demon god. It was equivalent to having two bloodlines in one body. What was the Son of Destiny? This was it. Although the untainted world was created by Pengu, the chaos demon gods also contributed a lot. Their origin was the foundation of the untainted world. Therefore, the descendants of the chaos demon gods were considered half-orthodox in the untainted world. This Khanate god-fiend had two bloodlines in one body, which was equivalent to having two orthodox bloodlines at the same time. His status was worthy of being called indescribably noble, not inferior to that of the true Pengu lineage. He was the first in history. This Khanate god-fiend was the first to have two bloodlines in one body. He was too extraordinary. If he could be born, it would not be difficult for him to reach the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian in the future. However, it was precisely because he was too extraordinary, so extraordinary that he was somewhat heaven-defying. As such, he attracted a calamity, and whether or not he could be born in the future also became complicated and confusing. What tribulation? Naturally, it was the human tribulation. Because of this Khanate god-fiend's extraordinariness, it attracted the attention of Feng Zichen and the others, causing them to come here. And this was the human tribulation of this Khanate god-fiend. Some people did not want to see the birth of this Khanate god-fiend. It was not because they were afraid of his talent, but because they did not like his background. The Pengu divine system was the Pengu divine system, and the Chaos Demon God system was the Chaos Demon God system. The two were clearly separated. How could they be mixed together? P.S. Today's 10,000 words are complete. There is no discount at all. Please give me monthly votes and tips. Chapter 820. This Khanate god-fiend had mixed up the concepts of the two and messed up the bloodline of the Pengu divine system. His birth was a mistake, so he should not exist. Of course, his existence was reasonable. Although everyone was unwilling to see this Khanate god-fiend appear, there was a reason for his existence. They could not bring themselves to kill him. If this Khanate god-fiend had grown up and become a top-notch great divine ability expert, they would not waste their breath and kill him directly. However, this Khanate god-fiend had yet to be born. They were all people of status and dignity, so they could not bring themselves to kill a Khanate god-fiend that had yet to be born. However, even if they couldn't kill him, it didn't mean that they would let him go. Killing him was only the most direct method. Apart from that, they had many other methods to deal with this Khanate god-fiend. For example, taking advantage of the fact that he was not born yet, he first destroyed his providence. How would they do it? It was simple. They could create an Khanate god-fiend in advance and let him be born before this Khanate god-fiend. Then they could destroy his luck. This way, this Khanate god-fiend's luck would definitely be affected, and the Khanate god-fiend that had stolen his luck would become his lifelong enemy. This method was good. They could stop this Khanate god-fiend's development without bloodshed and nurture a mortal enemy for him. It would be difficult for him to grow in the future. With that thought in mind, everyone immediately took action. They all used various methods to create the Khanate god-fiends in their divine lands. First, providence. If they obtained it and nurtured it seriously, they might be able to teach a top-notch, great divine ability expert. Such an opportunity could not be given to others. On Shoyang Mountain, the Grand Pure One spiritual came with the Khanate cardinal treasure, the Taiji diagram. It absorbed all the chi of heaven and earth from all directions and was transformed by the Taiji diagram into the purest Khanate Taiji origin. It poured into the brass vein under Shoyang Mountain. The brass of Shoyang Mountain was famous in the world. It was a top-notch divine metal in the primordial world. A connate cardinal treasure refined with this material was as powerful as an ordinary connate spirit treasure. It was obvious how precious this ore was. Originally, the brass on Shoyang Mountain had long been dug out. However, as the world transformed, the brass vein sensed the creation chi of heaven and earth and was reborn. Not only that, endless creation chi gathered at the center of the brass mine, giving birth to an innate divine fetus. This was the brass spirit, a connate fiend god that the three realms had nurtured. If nothing unexpected happened, this connate god fiend should have been born tens of thousands of years later. Then it transformed and was accepted as a disciple by the Grand Pure One. However, at that moment, in order to break the destiny of the connate god fiend and fight for the number one destiny, the Grand Pure One decided to give birth to his future disciple in advance. Even with the help of the Taiji diagram, forcefully reviving the brass spirit would still have some impact on it. However, compared to the number one providence, this little bit of influence was nothing. The Grand Pure One was gambling. He was using this disciple's future to bet that he would be the first to be born. If he succeeded, he would be blessed by the number one providence, and his future would be limitless. If he failed, well, it doesn't really matter. It's just stunted growth. With the Grand Pure One's methods, he could easily make up for it. Thinking about it this way, if he lost, he would not suffer a loss. If he won, he would make a huge profit. Why didn't the Grand Pure One take this gamble? At the same time that the Grand Pure One took action, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was also taking action. His spiritual will carry the Panga banner across an endless distance and return to Mount Kunlun. Mount Kunlun, the first divine mountain of the primordial world after Mount Bujo was destroyed, where the eastern ancestral veins were located. This mountain could be said to be a collection of the fortune of heaven and earth. Such a special place naturally gave birth to more than one connate god-fiend. The Kunlun Mountains were vast and boundless. There were countless places of destiny inside. Now that the world had transformed, they had obtained the support of the creation chi of heaven and earth and undoubtedly became even more extraordinary. Wasn't it normal to give birth to a few connate god-fiends or connate spiritual treasures? Although there were many connate god-fiends on the mountain, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was not picky. The target he wanted to give birth to was very clear. It was a connate god-fiend born on Mount Yujing. At the same time, this was also the strongest connate god-fiend born on Mount Kunlun. Let's not talk about the connate god-fiend. Let's talk about Mount Yujing first. Besides the main peak of East Kunlun, there were 72 other divine mountains. All of them were extraordinary. They were all top-notch blessed places in the primordial world. Among the 72 divine mountains, Mount Yujing might not be the best, but it was definitely the most special one. That was because this was the place where Hongjun, Taoist master, lived before he attained Tao. As the place where Hongjun, Taoist master, cultivated, it was obvious how extraordinary this place was. It was called the Celestial Ancestral Court, and the connate god-fiend was born here. Anything that was related to Hongjun Taoist master would become extraordinary, let alone this connate god-fiend. When he discovered that there was a connate god-fiend on Mount Yujing, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, who had already given up on taking in disciples, suddenly had the thought of taking in a disciple again. He wanted to take him in as his direct disciple. Such a background was not enough for the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning to change his mind and take him in as his direct disciple. He was only a disciple in name. But this connate god-fiend had yet to be born, and he was already chosen as his direct disciple by the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. The main peak of Mount Yujing, the peak of the Purple Clouds Peak, was filled with purple clouds. It stretched for more than 3,000 miles, and it was very noble. Under the purple clouds, there was a vast and empty land. Originally, this place was not empty. The Purple Clouds Palace, known as the #1 holy ground in the primordial world, was located here before they went to the chaos beyond the heavens. After the purple cloud's palace left, this place became empty and spacious. In the middle of the empty land, there was a Khanate god-fiend that was 99 feet tall. It had 9 orifices and celestial light surrounded it. It kept on breathing in the surrounding purple clouds. In the process of breathing in the purple clouds, there were 10,000 celestial projections that appeared around it. They surrounded it and chanted continuously. They seemed to be praying and also seemed to be giving blessings. This made the Khanate god-fiend seem even more precious. This was a natural-born divine fetus. Inside, it was the future, celestial lord of the immortal Tao. It was born in the middle of the purple cloud's peak, and it was also the place where the Hongjun Tao ancestor cultivated. Born here, it was naturally tainted with a trace of the immortal Tao. It was very noble and could be called the child of the immortal Tao. If not for the Khanate god-fiend in the ruins of Mount Buzhou, which was tainted with the blood of Pengu and the blood of the chaos demonic god, it would be too extraordinary. The first Khanate god-fiend to be born in the 3 realms would undoubtedly be him. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning had high hopes for him. Coming in front of the divine fetus, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning raised the Penga banner and released streaks of chaos origin energy to speed up his birth. At the same time, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning was also secretly forming a seal. He drew the ancestral power of Mount Kunlun and the chaos origin energy to strengthen the divine fetus. It had to be said that the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, who had the entire Mount Kunlun, was much more convenient than others. Not to mention anything else, just the ancestral vein energy was so precious that it wasn't inferior to the chaos quintessence energy. At the same time, on the other side of Mount Kunlun, where West Kunlun was, the Queen Mother of the West was also secretly mobilizing the power of the entire West Kunlun to continuously nurture the Khanate god-fiend in front of her. That divine fetus was indeed nurtured in West Kunlun, but the Khanate god-fiend nurtured in it had long been taken over by someone else. That's right, the Khanate god-fiend nurtured Dong Wang Kung. The wisp of Dong Wang Kung's Khanate indestructible true spirit that the Queen Mother of the West had secretly taken away was injected into this Khanate god-fiend to be nurtured again. At this moment, the Queen Mother of the West was nurturing him. Obviously, she wanted to let Dong Wang Kung fight for the opportunity to be first. She had no choice other than the great perfection of sage-to-be and the supreme grade Khanate spiritual treasure Jingyang Bell. Dong Wang Kung had nothing left. He had even lost his identity. As a last resort, the Queen Mother of the West had let Dong Wang Kung fight for the opportunity to be first in order to increase his chances of achieving Tao in the future. On Golden Turtle Island, the remaining disciples of the Jie sect formed a mysterious Khanate formation under the leadership of Xianqing. They directly absorbed the chaotic qi from the void and transformed it into the most primitive Khanate origin. They kept injecting it into the Khanate god-fiend in the center of the formation. Meanwhile, the Tongtian sect leaders divine will control the fairy-slaying sword formation and crazily gathered the killing power between heaven and earth. He then refined it and injected it into the Khanate god-fiend to help him transform. This was the Khanate god-fiend nurtured by Golden Turtle Island. It was born from the combination of the essence qi of the East Sea and the spiritual qi of Golden Turtle Island. When it was first nurtured, it had inherited the mark of the fairy-slaying sword formation. It was quite extraordinary and was born to be a killing god. At this moment, the Tongtian sect leader was using the power of the entire sect to nurture this Khanate god-fiend to fight for the opportunity to be first. Other than the 3 pure ones, it was the 2 saints of the West. On Mount Meru, a grade 9 virtuous golden lotus bloomed with bright light. There was also a shocking spirituality contained in it. Obviously, this grade 9 virtuous golden lotus already had spirituality and was about to transform. The West was not as rich as the East, and Mount Meru had been through many wars. There was not much of its origin left. It was not enough for itself, let alone for others. The chaos demon god's origin was used to repair the West's ancestral veins and strengthen the West's origin of the earth. It could not be used. Therefore, the two saints of the West gritted their teeth and directly bled, using their own connate origin to nurture this grade, 9 virtuous golden lotus. The two saints of the West were also born with connate spiritual roots. Therefore, when the grade 9 virtuous golden lotus devoured their origin, not only would it not be affected, but it would also gain a lot of benefits. The grade 9 virtuous golden lotus itself was a superior grade connate spiritual treasure. Once it transformed, it would be the most superior connate god fiend. Now that it had transformed after devouring the saint's origin, it would probably transform into the most powerful connate god fiend. This golden lotus carried the high hopes of the two saints of the West. It should be the future of the Western sect. Speaking of which, the Western sect was becoming more and more like Buddhism. They both used lotuses as sacred objects, but one was a golden lotus and the other a black lotus. The commotion this time was so great that even Nuwa, who usually ignored worldly affairs, couldn't help but intervene. She released her divine will and brought the connate treasure cauldron of heaven and earth to an immortal mountain in the East Sea. This mountain was called Flower Fruit Mountain. There was a 5-colored immortal stone on the mountain, which was the same 5-colored divine stone used to mend the heavens. When heaven and earth transformed, this divine sky-mending stone obtained an opportunity and contained a divine fetus, a connate god fiend. Originally, it would take tens of thousands of years for this divine fetus to be born, but Nuwa came looking for fate and decided to give it an opportunity, allowing it to be born in advance. Rumble! The cauldron of heaven and earth vibrated, accepting the power of the universe and turning it into the divine sky-mending stone. It constantly strengthened the divine fetus inside. If it weren't for Nuwa's help, this divine sky-mending stone would give birth to a stone monkey after tens of thousands of years. It would be born with the will of chaos and create a great name. But after Nuwa took action, its fate changed. What was the cauldron of heaven and earth? It was a connate treasure, and also the only treasure in the primitive world that could go against the connate heavens. After being refined by the cauldron of heaven and earth, the connate origin of the divine stone was further purified. The connate god fiend inside was affected and began to transform. Its development became more and more complete. It evolved from a monkey to a human with a connate Tao body. At this moment, the divine sky-mending stone no longer gave birth to a spiritual stone monkey, but a divine sky-mending man who inherited the will of mending the heavens. He was even stronger. At the same time that Nuwa took action, Goddess Hutu also took action. The Chaos Treasure 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc suddenly trembled violently. Unparalleled power surged out of the nether realm, broke through the seal of the sky curtain, and came to the great chaos outside the realm, sweeping away all the chaos chi within 100,000 miles. Rumble. In the 6 paths, a large amount of chaos chi suddenly surged out of the cave that represented the shaman Tao. It was absorbed by Panga's heart that floated in the depths of the shaman Tao. Bang! 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 After a long time, Panga's heart beat again, and a loud sound was heard. As it beat, heaven and earth resonated with it. It wasn't Panga's heart resonating with heaven and earth, but heaven and earth resonating with Panga's heart, beating with its rhythm. Bang! With every beat of Panga's heart, a large amount of chaos chi was absorbed by it. Then, purple blood accompanied by purple murderous aura flowed on Panga's heart. The purple blood was Panga's blood, and the purple murderous aura was the heavenly god's murderous aura. Panga's heart produced blood again, which meant that it was beginning to give birth to a connate grand magus. What was a connate Grand Magus? It was a Grand Magus that was directly transformed from Penga's blood, not a Grand Magus that was cultivated. The Grand Magus that was transformed from Penga's blood essence was a Grand Magus. It was a natural-born, sacred existence that was destined to attain the Tao. The Grand Magus that was transformed from Penga's blood was a connate Grand Magus. Each of them was a top-notch connate god-fiend, and they had a very high chance of attaining the Tao in the future. Gradually, Pengu's heart beat faster and faster, and the chaos chi around him disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 821. The purple blood in Penga's heart flowed faster and faster, and the Dutian divine murderous chi became denser. Not long after, wisps of magical life force burst out of Penga's heart and spread across the place. A new connate Grand Magus was born. After so many years, a new connate Grand Magus was born in Penga's heart again. And this connate Grand Magus was the connate divine demon that Goddess Huta used to fight for the first opportunity. In the North Continent, where the demons were, Dong Huang Tai looked at the connate godly fetus in front of him with nostalgia in his eyes. One could see that the connate godly fetus in front of Dong Huang Tai was surrounded by a layer of dazzling, true sunfire. Through the dazzling golden flames, one could see that there was a three-legged golden crow in the connate godly fetus, slowly spreading its wings. This connate godly fetus had given birth to a little golden crow, not on the sun, but in the North Continent in the demon's base camp. It was unbelievable that a creature like the great sun golden crow was born outside the sun star. Then how did it come to be? It wasn't that Dong Huang Tai's methods were heaven-defying, but he found the corpses of the 9 little golden crows that had died long ago. He used a supreme divine power to merge the origins of the 9 little golden crows. At the same time, he used a heaven-defying method to cut off a trace of the creation chi of heaven and earth, which gave birth to the 13th little golden crow in the Eldritch world. This connate godly fetus was born with the power of the 9 little golden crows. Once it was born, it would be a top-tier connate divine demon. And it was the candidate that Tai used to fight for the first opportunity this time. At the end of the distant sea, there was a small island filled with chaotic chi. No one knew when it was born or when it existed. In short, it was very mysterious. However, the spiritual aura on the island was quite shocking. It was not inferior to a top-tier blessed grotto heaven. It was not much weaker than the 3-deity island of the Xianqing sect. This island was another top-tier holy land. At this moment, a mysterious purple-clothed man suddenly appeared on this uninhabited island. The person who came was very strong. The connate formation on the island seemed to not exist in front of him, allowing him to pass through it easily. Soon, the mysterious man in purple arrived at the center of the island, where the innate divine fetus was shrouded in chaotic chi. That's right, there was also an innate divine fetus on this mysterious island. Judging from the chaotic energy swirling around it, it was clear that the innate god born from this innate divine fetus would be ridiculously strong. Even the weakest one would be a top innate god. As for the mysterious purple-robed man, if a powerful cultivator were here, they would recognize him as the number 1 person in the desolate era, Tao ancestor, Hongjun. He actually left the Purple Cloud Palace and came to this mysterious island to see an innate godly fetus in person. Then, what exactly was the origin of this innate divine fetus, to actually be able to attract so much attention from the Tao ancestor? After standing in front of the innate divine embryo for a long while, Tao ancestor Hongjun opened his mouth and said earnestly, "Hongyan, I hope this experience can help you change your bad habit of meddling in other people's business." Hongyan, the innate divine fetus that was born, was actually ancestor Hongyan. No wonder the Tao ancestor came here personally. Did Tao ancestor Hongjun come here to give birth to ancestor Hongyin so that he could fight for the number one opportunity? Of course not. Ancestor Hongyin was an innate divine being, the top existence in the desolate era. To him, it was not important whether he had the number one opportunity or not. Tao ancestor Hongjun came here to end the karma between him and ancestor Hongyin. Back then, ancestor Hongyin gave up his position in the Purple Cloud Palace to the two sages of the West, causing the Xian sect to lose two sages. Because of this, ancestor Hongyin and the Xian sect formed a huge karma. This was also the reason why ancestor Hongyin could not become a sage even though he possessed the Hongmeng purple cloud. If the huge karma on him did not end, how could he become a sage? Tao ancestor Hongjun was also a petty person. Ancestor Hongyun had spoiled his plans and caused him to lose two sages. He was angry. It was good enough that he did not find trouble with ancestor Hongyun. Why would he take the initiative to end the karma with him? Therefore, Tao ancestor Hongjun did not do anything when ancestor Hongyun was in trouble. But today, things changed and Tao ancestor Hongjun had to take the initiative to come here. It was because Tao ancestor Hongjun, who was in seclusion, suddenly felt that there was a change in the heavens and that the Xian sect was in danger of losing their luck. Tao ancestor Hongjun was immediately awakened by this feeling. Then he hurriedly activated the fragment of the jade butterfly of fate to deduce the reason for the change in the heavens. In a short while, Tao ancestor Hongjun found out the reason. The two sages of the West had the intention to stand on their own. They planned to set up another sect and create their own sect. Tao ancestor Hongjun did not care about whether the two sages of the West were independent or not. He did not like the two of them, and it was good that they left. However, the two of them could leave. But if they set up another sect, it would undoubtedly cause the Xian sect to lose their luck and become the foundation of their new orthodoxy. Tao ancestor Hongjun could not tolerate this. Good Lord, he even tried to poach him. What was the meaning of this? Did he really think that he, Hongjun, was old and couldn't lift a knife? Unfortunately, even if Tao ancestor Hongjun had supreme abilities, he could not do anything. The independence of the two sages of the West was the inevitable result of the evolution of the heavenly way. As a part of the heavenly way, Tao ancestor Hongjun could not disobey the heavenly way and attack the two sages of the West. Therefore, even if he was unwilling, Tao ancestor Hongjun could not stop them. It seemed that the independence of the two sages of the West was inevitable. In the Purple Cloud Palace, the more Tao ancestor Hongjun thought about it, the angrier he became. The Xian sect was his painstaking effort. How could he tolerate the two traitorous disciples destroying his painstaking effort? It had to be said that Tao ancestor Hongjun was indeed the most cunning old man in the primitive world. After sitting cross-legged in the Purple Cloud Palace for a few days, he really thought of a way to break the situation. Since he could not stop the two sages of the West from establishing their own sect, he would let nature take its course and ignore it. After it thrived, he would send people into the new sect and bring it back to the Xian sect. In this way, the luck of the Xian sect did not decrease. Instead, it increased a little. This plan could be said to be brilliant. If it succeeded, all the hard work of the two sages of the West would be done for the sake of the Xian sect. Moreover, they would offend all the experts of the Xian sect. How miserable would that be? However, although the plan was good, it was not easy to succeed. He had to find a suitable person to carry it out. Tao ancestor Hongjun thought about it and decided that the candidate would be ancestor Hongyin. In the primitive world, there was no one more suitable than him to carry out this plan. There was no other reason than that the two sages of the West owed ancestor Hongyin. The karma of becoming a sage was huge. If ancestor Hongyun joined the Western sect, the two sages of the West would at least confer him the title of the third sect master. They would not dare to look down on him. Tao ancestor Hongjun sent ancestor Hongyan to convert the new sect established by the two sages of the West. Therefore, Tao ancestor Hongjun personally came to the birthplace of ancestor Hongyan. He planned to suppress him and delay his birth so that he could be born when the two sages of the West established their own sect. Delaying the birth of ancestor Hongyan was easy for Tao ancestor Hongjun. He did not need to use any underhanded means. He only needed to preach to the innate godly fetus that gave birth to ancestor Hongyan. After ancestor Hongyan listened to the preaching of Tao ancestor, he was enlightened and naturally entered the state of enlightenment. This affected the timing of his birth. This was not a problem at all. Moreover, ancestor Hongyan would not blame Tao ancestor for delaying his birth. Instead, he would be grateful to Tao ancestor for giving him an opportunity. Wasn't it an opportunity to listen to Tao ancestor Hongjuan's preaching of Tao? The pitiful two sages of the West did not make the Western sect prosper. In the end, they had no choice but to come up with a method that was not a method. That was to establish another sect and cut off part of the luck of the Xian sect to make the Western sect prosper. It was a good idea. However, before it could be implemented, Tao ancestor Hongjun saw through it and formulated a countermeasure. The two sages of the West did not know about it. They thought that they were doing it secretly and were preparing to establish another sect. They were pitiful. Everyone had their own plans. Feng Zichen was no exception. It could be said that among his avatars, other than Gaochen, Xianqing, Dongjun, and ancestor Yinyang, the rest had their own plans. For example, in the ultimate, a dark abyss was looming. It was as if there was a crack in the heavens and earth, releasing endless demonic qi. This was the demon abyss, the holy land of the heavenly fiend sect. When the eldritch world was transforming, the ultimate and the demon heart were not idle. They secretly set up a formation. When the heavens and earth were being destroyed, they crazily absorbed the calamity qi and evil qi in the heavens and earth and turned them into the purest demonic qi. Then, the two of them merged the demonic qi with part of the ultimate's origin. Using it as a foundation, they created a holy land of the demonic sect. It was the demonic abyss in front of them. The demonic abyss was boundless and had no end. It merged with the ultimate's origin and stood in the void. It could spontaneously absorb the calamity qi and evil qi in the heavens and earth and turn them into pure demonic qi. In order to create the demonic abyss, the ultimate and the demon heart had invested all of their wealth. Even so, the demonic abyss in front of them had not been truly born. It was only a half-finished product. Otherwise, the demonic abyss would have been truly born and would have stood tall in the boundless void instead of looming in the void like it was now. Even so, the demonic abyss gained some benefits when the heavens and earth transformed and the connate creation qi filled the air. One could see that in the depths of the demonic abyss, endless demonic qi was surging and gathering, slowly turning into several connate divine fetuses. These connate divine fetuses were the future of the heavenly fiend sect. They were the connate divine fiends that the heavenly Tao had specially nurtured in order to prosper the heavenly fiend sect. At this moment, the ultimate and the demon heart were working together, using all their strength to gather the world's origin and slowly strengthening these connate divine fetuses. The demonic abyss's origin was weak. Even if they put all their strength together, it was impossible to produce connate divine fetuses. Therefore, the ultimate and the demon heart did not care about fighting for first place at all. The two of them only had the attitude of having fun and fighting for the opportunity to be first place. Could not fight for it? That was too normal. It would be abnormal if they succeeded. The ultimate and the demon heart were not in a hurry because they knew that with the primordial self's backup plan, they would definitely win this fight for first place. After all, the connate divine fetuses in the primordial self's hands were too special and too precious. Even the connate divine fetuses in the ruins of Mount Buzhou might not be comparable to the one in Feng Zichen's hands. Feng Zichen used honorifics instead of honorifics to show how much Feng Zichen valued him. In the underworld, endless yin qi filled the air and gathered in one place. It was the ancestral land of the ghost Tao, Fengdu Mountain. One could see that at the peak of Fengdu Mountain, incarnate divine fetuses surrounded by ghost qi was releasing a strange light. The connate yin qi that surged from all over the underworld was absorbed by the connate divine fetuses as the light swallowed it. And this connate divine fetuses gave birth to the first connate god fiend of the ghost Tao. His appearance was a sign of the prosperity of the ghost Tao. There was more than one connate divine fetuses born in the underworld. There were even better ones. However, the Emperor of Fengdu valued this connate divine fetuses the most because they carried the future of the ghost Tao. The connate god fiend born from this connate divine fetuses would definitely lead the ghost Tao out of the underworld and let the entire three realms hear of the ghost Tao's name. Apart from this connate god fiend, there were many other wonderful connate races born in the underworld. Among them, the one that caught the Emperor of Fengdu's attention the most was the special race born from the ghost Tao, the ghost race. Even ghosts could be born from heaven and earth. This world was getting more and more mysterious. To be honest, the ghost Emperor of Fengdu valued the connate divine fetuses very much. If it weren't for the fact that the connate divine fetuses in his true body was too powerful, he would have helped this connate divine fetuses fight for the first place. In the central divine region, the ancestral land of the human race, under the world tree, 9 human prodigies gathered. They bathed in the world tree's radiance and kept swallowing the world origin that it emitted. Compared to the others, the North Star was much more realistic. He didn't need to look for connate divine fetuses to nurture. There were so many human prodigies who cultivated the god fiend Tao and were about to transform into connate god fiends. If that was the case, why didn't the North Star nurture his own prodigies and transform them into connate god fiends? Why did he look for incarnate divine fetuses to nurture? Could it be that human prodigies were weaker than connate god fiends? Therefore, the North Star selected the 9 most outstanding prodigies of the human race and had them cultivate under the world tree. The world origin would help them undergo the final transformation and transform them into connate god fiends. The connate divine fetuses in the boundless starry sky were very powerful and honorable. Theoretically, there shouldn't be any problems if they were to fight for the first place. However, Feng Zichen had always been cautious in everything he did. He always had to be prepared for both sides to prevent any accidents from happening. Nothing was absolute. Overconfidence could lead to failure. P.S. I'm too tired today. I've been filling a septic tank for the entire afternoon. Chapter 8:22. A postnatal innate god fiend was still an innate god fiend. They could still fight for the first place. The world origin was a treasure that was not inferior to the world origin. It had the ability to nurture innate god fiends. If those human prodigies absorbed it, it would undoubtedly be much easier for them to transform into innate god fiends. Now, it all depended on their own fortunes. Whether they could be the first to transform into innate god fiends would affect their future achievements. Although Feng Zichen was more optimistic about the innate Tao embryo in the boundless starry sky, if the human prodigies could be born before him, then Feng Zichen was still very much looking forward to this scene. This meant that the human prodigies were not inferior to any innate god fiends. While everyone was busy, Great Emperor Ziwei's divine consciousness wobbled into the boundless starry sky. Then he walked towards the center of the starry sky at a leisurely pace. There was a majestic divine mountain that exuded endless divine might. It suppressed the entire boundless starry sky, making it unusually stable. Even if several primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian were to fight here, it would be difficult to shake this place at all. And this divine mountain was none other than Mount Buzhou. At the end of the ancient era, Mount Buzhou collapsed. Its broken body was moved into the boundless starry sky by Feng Zichen's supreme divine power. There were two reasons for this. The first was because the boundless starry sky was on the verge of shattering at that time and could collapse at any time. Therefore, Feng Zichen moved Mount Buzhou's body and used its remaining divine might to suppress the void that was about to shatter, temporarily stabilizing it. The second reason was because of Feng Zichen's selfishness. He wanted to see if he could restore Mount Buzhou to its peak with the power of the god Pangu. At its peak, Mount Buzhou could suppress the entire eldritch world. Its power was not inferior to that of a chaos supreme treasure. If Feng Zichen really succeeded, it would mean that he had mastered a treasure that was comparable to a chaos supreme treasure. Just thinking about it made people look forward to it. Therefore, Feng Zichen brought the broken mountain of Mount Buzhou back to the boundless starry sky, and the result did not disappoint him. Following the upgrade of the entire boundless starry sky, this section of Mount Buzhou had also benefited greatly. Not only had it evolved into Mount Buzhou, but it had also nurtured an ancestral vein. It was not the Eastern ancestral bloodline or the Western ancestral bloodline. It was the ancestral bloodline of the primordial world, the ancestor of all bloodlines. In short, the ancestral vein in Mount Buzhou was the first ancestral vein that was born at the beginning of the world. Originally, this ancestral vein had been destroyed along with the collapse of Mount Buzhou. However, at this moment, Mount Buzhou had been transformed into the divine Mount Buzhou. The ancestral veins that were supposed to be dead inside the mountain were affected and were rejuvenated. What a great fortune! The new divine Mount Buzhou naturally could not be compared to the original one. However, it could not be underestimated. In terms of power, this mountain was not inferior to any chaos supreme treasure. In some aspects, it was even superior. This was a true supreme treasure. Once this mountain appeared, it suppressed everything. Under the Wuji Daluo Jinxian, there was no way to resist. There was no other possibility except that everything was frozen. Moreover, with the suppression of the small Mount Buzhou in the boundless starry sky, there was no need to worry about it being breached by outsiders. If one wanted to shatter the boundless starry sky, one had to shatter the small Mount Buzhou first. The small Mount Buzhou was very powerful. It stood at the center of the boundless starry sky, directly below the Emperor Star. It emitted endless Panga's divine power, stabilizing the entire boundless starry sky. Feng Zichen had come for it. That's right. The innate divine fetus that Feng Zichen valued so much was nurtured by the small Mount Buzhou. Even Feng Zichen did not discover that there was a trace of Panga's essence left in the broken Mount Buzhou. This trace of Panga's essence, along with the broken Mount Buzhou, was brought into the boundless starry sky by Feng Zichen and nourished by the power of Panga's divine power. And with the nourishment of Panga's divine power, this trace of Panga's essence gradually gave birth to a faint trace of vitality. The vitality was very weak, and there was almost no possibility of it evolving into life. But the creation of the world was just so wonderful. When the boundless starry sky was upgraded, everything in it was affected and more or less received some creation. The trace of Panga's essence, which gathered the power of the boundless starry sky, the power of the innate ancestral veins, and the power of the small Mount Buzhou, finally underwent an unimaginable transformation and turned into an innate divine fetus. Incredible! The life formed by Panga's essence was nurtured by Mount Buzhou. Although it was not born, Feng Zichen could already confirm that this innate divine fetus was nurturing an innate divine being, the true authentic Pangu. It was really incredible. It had been hundreds of millions of years since the creation of the world. In this era, there was actually the birth of an authentic Pangu. It was really too surprising. To be honest, when Feng Zichen noticed the birth of this innate divine fetus, he was also surprised and felt that it was very unbelievable. This authentic Pangu could really be said to be the son of miracles. He was born at an incredible time, and he had great creation and great opportunities. For this reason, Feng Zichen once again had the idea of taking in a disciple. He wanted to take this innate divine being as his disciple. Taking the authentic Pangu as his disciple was indeed in line with the identity of great Emperor Zhui. After all, he was the most noble existence in the primordial world. His disciple should also be abnormally noble. And in the primordial world, was there anyone nobler than the authentic Pangu? No. This innate divine fetus seemed to be a disciple tailor-made for Feng Zichen. It was suitable in all aspects and in all senses. Speaking of disciples, it had to be mentioned that Feng Zichen had personally raised the 3 disciples that he had high hopes for. They were Feng Jie, Zhang Hui, and Zhang Xiong. It was really strange. Feng Zichen had been searching in the realm sea for tens of thousands of years. He had searched through countless upper-class worlds, but he did not find any trace of the 3 of them. It was also strange. It was as if the 3 of them were not in the realm sea at all. On the eve of the demon clan's invasion of the human clan, Feng Jie and the other 2 unexpectedly disappeared when they were traveling. Feng Zichen originally wanted to look for them, but he calculated that this was an opportunity for the 3 of them. They were sent into the upper class world by the space storm. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen also gave up the idea of looking for Feng Jie and the other 2. Left and right, it was to send the 3 of them to the upper class world. Since the 3 of them had already gone, it saved Feng Zichen the trouble. At this point, countless years had passed, and during this period, there was no news of the 3 of them at all. Feng Zichen, who was originally very calm, was a little anxious now. He sent out doppelgangers several times to secretly sneak into the realm sea to find the whereabouts of the 3 of them. Unfortunately, he found nothing. After searching for several years, the only clue that Feng Zichen got was that the 3 of them had appeared in the realm sea for a short time before the great witch-demon war had happened. Then, soon, the 3 of them disappeared. Since then, there was no news of them. In the face of such a situation, if the feeling in his heart did not tell Feng Zichen that the 3 of them were not in trouble and were living well, Feng Zichen was afraid that he would have gone crazy long ago. That's right, the situation of the 3 of them was not very bad. Didn't you see that Feng Zichen even called the 3 of them they? Obviously, the 3 of them had reached the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests and had walked a very long distance on this path. Well, what Feng Zichen passed on to the 3 of them was the most ancient realm system, which was the version without the sage-to-be realm. The realm of the Daluo Taoist priests included everything. Therefore, Feng Zichen was not very clear about how strong the 3 of them were. Perhaps they were just ordinary Daluo Taoist priests. Of course, they could also be supreme Daluo, who was comparable to a sage-to-be. As for how strong they were, he would only know after meeting them. But Feng Zichen really could not find them. It was really strange. Before this, Feng Zichen would never have thought that in this vast world, there were people that he could not find. It should be known that when he used all his strength, Pangu's Dharma form, his strength was enough to touch the realm above that of the Wuji Daluo Jinxian. Alas, even so, he still could not find the 3 of them. The place where they were was really hidden. At the same time, this also let Feng Zichen know that the secrets hidden in this world were far more mysterious than he had imagined. He still needed to be stronger, not to mention the 3 of them. Since he could not find them anyway, Feng Zichen had no other choice but to secretly pray for them. While the other masters of the origin were using various methods to induce the birth of the innate godly fetus, Feng Zichen was still walking towards Mount Buzhou unhurriedly. Feng Zichen was not in a hurry at all, nor did he need to induce the birth of the innate godly fetus. This was because he firmly believed that the innate godly fetus, bred by this innate godly fetus, would definitely be the first to be born. Previously, Feng Zichen might not have been sure, but after seeing the innate godly fetus in the ruins of Mount Buzhou, he was sure of this point. The existence of the innate godly fetus was incredible. It was a combination of two great orthodoxies. But after all, it was not the blood of Pangu that bred it, but the sacred blood of Feng Zichen and the others. The difference between the first-generation blood and the second-generation blood seemed not big, but in fact it was the difference between heaven and earth. Feng Zichen, the three pure ones, Goddess Hutu, and all the other Pangu orthodoxies were tied together. Even if they were tied together, they would not dare to say that they were 1,000th as good as their father. In this way, it could be seen that the difference between the two was not in the same concept at all. The blood of the chaos demon god was also the blood that had been weakened by an unknown amount. More than half of its divinity had been obliterated by everyone. With all these conditions added together, Feng Zichen could already conclude that the innate godly fetus was not as good as the one in the boundless starry sky. This was the authentic Pangu orthodoxies, and it could not be faked. It was the most honorable existence in the untainted land. In the untainted land, the authentic Pangu orthodoxies were the legitimate sons, while the chaos demon god was only the son of a concubine. The gap was too big. Moreover, the fate of the Pangu divine branch would not tolerate the birth of the innate godly fetus with the bloodline of the chaos demon god. It would definitely find ways to obstruct the birth of the innate godly fetus. There were too many obstacles. The innate godly fetus in the ruins of Mount Bujo should not have existed in the first place. Therefore, the hardships it had experienced were also beyond imagination. However, Feng Zichen's focus was not on this, but on the birthplace of the two innate godly fetus. Mount Bujo. The two innate godly fetus had one thing in common, and that was that they were both born in Mount Bujo. One was born in the ruins of Mount Bujo, while the other was born in the mountains of Mount Bujo. They were both born in Mount Bujo. It was a very strange phenomenon. Mount Bujo had collapsed for so many years. Why were two innate godly fetus born in succession? Was this a coincidence? It did not look like it. It seemed to be deliberate. However, on second thought, Feng Zichen felt that it was a coincidence. It was certain that the innate godly fetus in the ruins of Mount Bujo was deliberately created by someone. However, the birth of the innate godly fetus in Little Mount Bujo was probably really a coincidence. After all, even Feng Zichen did not expect that an innate godly fetus would be born in Little Mount Bujo. If even Feng Zichen did not expect it, how could others guess it? It should be known that this was the boundless starry sky, where Feng Zichen's foundation was. Without his permission, even the way of heaven could not spy on this place. Therefore, Feng Zichen was confident that no one could do anything to this boundless starry sky. Before Feng Zichen walked to the front of Mount Bujo, he suddenly heard a boom in front of him. Then the whole untainted land was alarmed. Rays of colorful light spread out, connecting heaven and earth, spanning between heaven and earth. At the same time, all sorts of shocking phenomena appeared one after another as if they were free of charge. Even the heavenly Tao was alarmed. It personally covered the sky with a layer of 7-colored light, making the entire world seem beautiful. This was the authentic Pangu was born. The various phenomena that appeared now were the blessings, praise and praise of heaven and earth. The authentic Pangu was born holy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the son of heaven and earth. It would not be an exaggeration to give him any glory. Looking at the phenomena in front of him, Feng Zichen's heart moved, and he appeared in front of Little Mount Bujo. He opened his heavenly god eye and saw that inside Little Mount Bujo, where the innate divine meridians were, purple gas filled the air, intertwining with all kinds of strange phenomena. In the depths of the purple gas, there was a hazy, colorful light, which was constantly twisting and shrinking. When Feng Zichen rushed here, the light had evolved to its limit. It gradually took the shape of a human and then turned into a young Taoist. The young Taoist, like Feng Zichen, great emperor of Ziwei, had purple hair and purple eyes. This was the sign of the authentic Pangu. The Pangu had purple hair and purple eyes. The great Tao was purple. As a person close to the Tao, the Pangu was also changing to purple. Therefore, his direct descendants inherited his power and were born with purple hair and purple eyes. As for why the 12 ancestors of the 3 pure ones were not like this, it could only be said that they were an exception. In addition to the origin of the Pangu, they also needed the innate clear and turbid origin. Naturally, there would be changes. This young Taoist was born with the cultivation of Lord of Tai, which was the standard sign of an innate holy being. Whether it was the 3 pure ones or the Di Jun Tai, they were all born with the cultivation of innate Tao lords. An innate holy being and an authentic Pangu was extraordinary. Of course, it was impossible for him to be born empty-handed. He had a lot of spiritual treasures with him. When the young Taoist was born, he held a treasure in each hand. Chapter 8:23. The Taoist held a drum in his left hand. It was the dusk drum. The bell in his right hand was called the morning bell. When the 2 treasures were combined, they were called the morning bell and evening drum. They were top-notch connate numinous treasures that contained 45 connate divine restrictions. The morning bell and evening drum were treasures of the space-time attribute. They were extremely rare. In the primordial world, in terms of the Tao of space-time, only the heaven-opening treasure, the chaos bell, could suppress it. The rest could not compare to it. The power of this treasure was probably comparable to the He-Tu and the Luo Shu. It was the best connate numinous treasure below the true connate cardinal treasures. Apart from the treasures in his hands, the Taoist robe that the young Taoist was wearing was also extraordinary. It was called the Heavenly Crown Robe. There were 12 patterns on it. Sun, moon, stars, mountain, dragon, flower insect, zong-yi, algae, fire, pink rice, zong-yi, and fu were imprinted on the robe with a special method. They were vivid, as if they were real. Those were the 12 patterns that only appeared on the emperor's robe. This young Taoist was probably a natural-born emperor since he wore that robe. The 12 patterns had different symbolic meanings. It was generally believed that the sun, moon, and stars were chosen for their illumination. Mountain was chosen for its stability. Dragon was chosen for its adaptability. Flower insect, a type of pheasant, was chosen for its elegance. Zong-yi, a type of sacrificial ritual, was chosen for its loyalty and filial piety. Algae was chosen for its cleanliness. Fire was chosen for its brightness. Pink rice was chosen for its nourishment. Zong, axe-shaped, was chosen for its decisiveness. Fu was chosen for its clarity. The virtues of an emperor were all here. Without a doubt, this robe was also a supreme grade, connate numinous treasure. Yes, the star crown on his head was shining brightly under the illumination of the Tao light, emitting endless connate spiritual aura. It was at least a superior grade, connate numinous treasure. 2 supreme grade connate numinous treasures and 1 superior grade connate numinous treasure. A total of 3 connate numinous treasures were born. Pangu was indeed the son of heaven and earth. The treatment was good. As soon as he was born, the treasures he had surpassed 99% of the primordial world. Only a few living beings could compare to him. He was born rich. Disciple Buzhou greets master. The young Taoist Buzhou, came straight to Feng Zichen and bowed to him after he walked out of Mount Buzhou. Though Taoist Buzhou had just been born, he had gained sentience many years ago. Therefore, he recognized Feng Zichen and was very familiar with him. After all, when Feng Zichen was bored, he would sometimes preach to Taoist Buzhou and show his good side. Because of the friendship between them, Taoist Buzhou called Feng Zichen his teacher when he was born. You're not bad. Nodding his head, Feng Zichen said with satisfaction, with the name Buzhou, this disciple of his was very extraordinary. Perhaps the glory of Mount Buzhou would be renewed in his hands. To be honest, if one looked carefully at Taoist Buzhou's face, he would find that he was somewhat similar to Feng Zichen. It was normal. They were both Panga's descendants, and their appearances were inherited from Pango, so they were somewhat similar. Not to mention that Taoist Buzhou was born in the boundless starry sky. During the gestation period, it was inevitable that he would be contaminated with some of Feng Zichen's aura. Therefore, it was normal that he looked similar to Feng Zichen. To be honest, at this time, if the boundless starry sky gave birth to another innate saint with the property of stars, Feng Zichen would have to admit that he had a son, a real biological son, even if he didn't want to. Their bloodlines and origins were the same. Rumble. The moment Taoist Buzhou was born, the way of heaven immediately sensed it. A majestic fate gathered from all over the three realms and added to him. This was the fate of the first living being in the three realms. With the birth of Taoist Buzhou, the battle for the first place also came to an end. Feng Zichen won the final victory. The other masters at the level of origin naturally sensed the birth of Taoist Buzhou. On the one hand, they were shocked that there was a Pango's descendant in this world. On the other hand, they quickly accepted the result. After all, he was a Panga's descendant. With such a noble birth, wasn't it easy to occupy the fate of the first place? While accepting the result in their hearts, everyone slowed down their movements. Since there was already a result in the battle for first place, there was no need for the connate god-fiends that they valued to be born in a hurry. They would let nature take its course. Thinking of this, everyone stopped their movements and withdrew their divine thoughts. They returned to the ruins of Mount Buzhou and looked at the special innate Taoist embryo. At this moment, everyone's mood was much more relaxed. They were all top masters in the world. After learning about the birth of Taoist Buzhou, they roughly guessed that this man was most likely the enemy of this innate Taoist embryo. The enmity between the two did not come from the fate of the first place, but from Mount Buzhou. One was born from Mount Buzhou, the other from the ruins of Mount Buzhou. The birth of both could be said to have inherited the fate of Mount Buzhou. Although Mount Buzhou had been destroyed, its fate was still there, and its merit that supported the world for countless years was still there. This was the legacy left by Mount Buzhou. If someone could inherit it, the great Tao would be completed and he would be destined to become the Daluo Jinxian of origin in the future. Taoist Buzhou and this innate godly embryo were both innate gods born in Mount Buzhou. This meant that both of them were qualified to inherit the legacy of Mount Buzhou. However, there was only one legacy of Mount Buzhou. In the future, there could only be one person who could achieve the great Tao. Therefore, in the future, in order to achieve the great Tao and to compete for the legacy of Mount Buzhou, these two were bound to fight endlessly. The winner would get everything, infinity and immeasurable. He would achieve the great Tao and the fruit of origin. He would transcend the world and obtain great freedom. The loser would lose everything and have nothing. Feng Zichen naturally understood the problem that everyone could think of. He called out to Taoist Buzhou, "Let's go. Follow me to the ruins of Mount Buzhou and see your future enemy of the great Tao." While speaking, Feng Zichen's body was covered in purple gas. It wrapped around himself and Taoist Buzhou and directly disappeared on the spot. They came to the ruins of Mount Buzhou in front of everyone. At this time, no one knew what happened to the innate godly embryo. It was still not born and was still in the stage of being born. After greeting everyone one by one, Feng Zichen pulled Taoist Buzhou to the side and introduced him to everyone. "My fellow Taoists, I have just taken in a new disciple. His name is Buzhou and he is not bad. In the future, if you meet him on the road, please take care of him for my sake. I don't want him to cause trouble for me." While speaking, Feng Zichen pulled Taoist Buzhou to the front and pretended to be displeased. "Brat, why don't you say hello to your seniors?" Taoist Buzhou heard and quickly went to greet them one by one. He called them seniors, very sweetly. However, Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to let him greet the three pure ones, Goddess Hutu, and the others. Instead, he first went around them and let Taoist Buzhou greet the others. Among those people, except for Goddess Niwa, Donghuang Tai, and other origin primordial experts who accepted Taoist Buzhou's greeting calmly, the rest of the great divines all moved aside in the face of his greeting. They only accepted half of his greeting and did not dare to accept the full greeting. After all, he was the authentic Pangu and had a noble status. Apart from the saints, no one dared to accept his greeting. They were afraid that they would lose their luck. Emperor, you must be joking. Your disciple is born holy and authentic Pangu. He is destined to become an existence in the future. I'm afraid that it won't be long before he can stand shoulder to shoulder with poor Wei and the others. When we meet in the future, it's not certain who will take care of who. Seeing that Feng Zichen spoke so politely, someone joked and made everyone laugh. However, this sentence seemed to be a joke, but it was not necessarily not what everyone was thinking. Authentic Pangu. Looking at the authentic Pangu that still existed, except for Taoist Buzhou who had just been born, the rest had already reached the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Oh, ancestral, which Xianming was not, but he would be soon. This was the future primordial chaos Taoist master. The great emperor of Ziwei had really taken in a good disciple. Faintly, everyone looked at him with envy. Why was such a good talent not their own disciple? Sigh, jealousy bought envy. Even so, the great emperor of Ziwei still said that he was not bad. He was really taking advantage of others. Everyone could not help but spit a few times at Feng Zichen in their hearts. After Taoist Buzhou greeted everyone one by one, Feng Zichen pulled him to the front of the 3 pure ones and said to him, "Why aren't you coming over to greet your 3 uncle masters?" This seniority was not based on the Xianmen. From the perspective of the Xianmen, Feng Zichen had nothing to do with the 3 pure ones. He was not a member of the Xianmen at all. Taoist Buzhou's uncle masters was based on the bloodline of the Pangu. They were both authentic Pangu. As Feng Zichen's disciple, Taoist Buzhou had no problem calling the 3 pure ones uncle masters, unless the 3 pure ones gave up their identity as authentic Pangu or denied their identity as Taoist Buzhou. However, the 3 pure ones could not do either of these. Therefore, the 3 pure ones could only accept this cheap apprentice nephew. As for why they were called uncle masters and not uncle masters, of course, it was because the 3 pure ones were born much earlier than Feng Zichen. They were all of the same generation. Naturally, whoever was older would be the elder. "Greetings, uncle masters." Taoist Buzhou stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the 3 pure ones. At the side, Feng Zichen did not say anything. He only stared at the 3 pure ones with a faint smile. This was the first time he was greeting the 3 pure ones. Feng Zichen did not believe that the 3 pure ones would not be embarrassed to not give a greeting gift. Just as Feng Zichen thought, the 3 pure ones were so proud. This was the first time they met the Taoist of Mount Buzhou. Of course, they would be embarrassed to not give a greeting gift. Not only did they have to give, but they also had to give. Otherwise, once this matter spread, everyone would say that the 3 pure ones were stingy. The Grand Pure One smiled and reached out to help Taoist Buzhou up. He said, "What a good child." At this point, the Grand Pure One touched his sleeve and took out a purple pearl. He handed it to Taoist Buzhou and said, "Poor Wei doesn't have anything good. I'll give you this Taiching pearl to protect yourself." The Taiching pearl was formed from the connate Taiching Qi. It was the natal numinous treasure of the Grand Pure One. It contained 36 connate divine restrictions and was a rare treasure among superior grade connate numinous treasures. Taoist Buzhou could not reject it. He could only accept the Taiching pearl and thank the Grand Pure One continuously. After the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning took out a jade-colored pearl. It was a superior grade connate spirit jade pearl formed from the connate jade pure chi. The Grand Master of Heaven took out a green pearl. It was also a superior grade connate numinous treasure. The two of them handed the treasures to Taoist Buzhou. At the side, Feng Zichen could not help but smile when he saw that. When the three pearls were combined, it would be the supreme grade connate numinous treasure, the Three Pure Ones pearl. It contained the 9 heavens clear qi and was an immortal Tao treasure with endless uses. He had obtained a supreme grade connate numinous treasure just by bowing. This time, Taoist Buzhou had really profited. As for why Feng Zichen was happy, of course, it was because he had taken advantage of the 3 Pure Ones. In the primordial world, how many people dared to take advantage of the 3 Pure Ones? As long as he could take advantage of the 3 Pure Ones, Feng Zichen would be very happy. Moreover, the 3 Pure Ones could not return the loss this time. When Feng Zichen's disciples bowed to them, they wanted to give them a greeting gift. However, when their disciples bowed to Feng Zichen did not need to give them a greeting gift. The reason was very simple. The disciples of the 3 Pure Ones were not authentic Pangu. It had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. If the 3 Pure Ones wanted to take revenge, they could take in an authentic Pangu as their disciple. If they could not do it, they would definitely suffer. After the 3 Pure Ones, Feng Zichen led Taoist Buzhou to greet the Lady of Earth. "This is your Uncle Master, Lady of Earth." Taoist Buzhou obediently greeted her as Uncle Master. The Lady of Earth smiled, took out a long whip, and gave it to him. It was a superior grade connate numinous treasure, the mountain-moving whip. It had the ability to command mountains. After the Lady of Earth, Feng Zichen led Taoist Buzhou to greet the Gaochen and called him Uncle Master. Unfortunately, the Gaochen was poor and could not take out a superior grade connate numinous treasure. After all, he had the entire human race to feed. No matter how rich he would be squeezed dry. However, everyone knew that the human Emperor Gaochen and Great Emperor Zui were as close as brothers. At this time, if he didn't take out something good for his nephew, who knew how many rumors would be spread. After thinking about it, the Gaochen took a branch from the World Tree and gave it to Taoist Buzhou. The branch of the World Tree had endless magical uses. In terms of value, even if it was not as good as a supreme grade connate numinous treasure, it was not far off. In any case, it was definitely more precious than a superior grade connate numinous treasure. Giving such a gift was in line with the relationship between the Gaochen and Great Emperor Zui. He was also ruthless. In order to trick the 3 Pure Ones, Feng Zichen had even tricked himself. How ruthless! Just as Taoist Buzhou was reaping a bountiful harvest, the connate divine fetus that had been accumulating power for a long time was finally about to be born. Boom! With a loud rumble, the colorful divine blood in the blood pool below the connate divine fetus suddenly began to shrink, turning into waves of powerful energy that surged into the connate divine fetus. Whoosh, endless light of the way rose, and within the dazzling divine light, a huge figure gradually appeared. In an instant, an inexplicable pressure of Taoist priests spread. Chapter 824. Taoist priests. This special connate god-fiend had the cultivation base of the Daluo Taoist priest the moment he was born. This was not a good sign. For a moment, everyone frowned. Throughout the history of the primordial world, when Great Emperor Zui was born, he had the strength of a top-notch great divine ability. The rest, including Tao ancestor Hongjun, only had the cultivation base of Tai Jingxian when he was born. This seemed to be a silent rule that all connate god-fiends had to abide by when they were born. The greater the phenomenon at birth, the greater the potential and the greater the future achievements. This was true. However, it was not necessarily a good thing to be born with high strength. One had to know that often things that were too heaven-defying would be attacked by the heavenly Tao. He had the cultivation base of the Daluo Taoist priests the moment he was born. He was even more impressive than Tao ancestor Hongjun and had caused such a big commotion. Wasn't this a live target for the heavenly Tao waiting for it to attack? Back then, great Emperor Ziwei was able to be born smoothly. In addition to his noble status, it was mainly because he had the merit of saving the world. He stabilized the boundless starry sky, stabilized the heavenly realm, and saved the primordial world. It could be said that his merit was boundless. With this merit, no matter how heaven-defying great Emperor Ziwei's performance was, the heavenly Tao would not target him. Instead, it would reward him for his contributions to saving the world. Great Emperor Ziwei had the merit of saving the world, so he could do things without any restrictions. However, this special Khanate god-fiend had nothing. Therefore, the moment he was born was the moment his calamity arrived. He survived. He was born with a sacred birth, the most orthodox of orthodox, and inherited part of the legacy of Mount Buzhou. He had the possibility of attaining the Tao in the future and had a boundless future. However, everything was like the moon in the water, the flowers in the mirror. The ashes flew away without leaving a trace. However, the current him was not a complete Daluo Taoist priest. His strength had reached this level, but his realm had not caught up. His innate true spirit had not transformed into an innate, indestructible true spirit. Only when he successfully survived the calamity could he achieve the true Daluo Taoist priest's realm. He's here. At this moment, someone whispered. Everyone looked up and saw endless dark clouds gathering in the sky. Lightning flashed in the clouds from time to time, exuding a terrifying heavenly might. The innate god's heavenly tribulation was here. Although Leisha had set up all the tribulations in the world, the heavenly Tao was not complete. There was an evasive one. Naturally, Leisha could not truly control all the tribulations in the world. In the untainted world, there were 3 calamities. They were constantly changing, so even the sages could not see them clearly. Even the Thunderlock could not control them. These 3 tribulations were the heavenly tribulation from the heavenly Tao, the earthly tribulation from the earth Tao, and the human tribulation from the human Tao. Among the 3 tribulations, the human tribulation was the most common one. It could be as minor as a quarrel or an impulsive murder, or as major as a deliberate murder. As he thought about it, his murderous intent rose. This was the tribulation of man. The murderous intent came from all living beings. Among the 3 tribulations, the heavenly tribulation was rare, but it was not non-existent. It was a natural phenomenon, such as wind, rain, thunder, lightning, landslide, tsunami, earthquake, meteorite fall. They were all a kind of heavenly tribulation. The murderous intent came from heaven and earth. As for the earthly tribulation, to be honest, although there was one in the untainted land, it was more like a stopgap. It was added forcibly to make up the 3 tribulations together with the heavenly tribulation and human tribulation. The earthly tribulation was born from the Tao. However, the Tao did not do anything. It only knew how to nurture all living beings and would never interfere with the operation of heaven and earth. Therefore, although the earthly tribulation was called, it never happened. Now, this special innate God was facing the heavenly tribulation of the 3 tribulations. In the eyes of the heavenly Tao, he who had the bloodline of Pangu and the bloodline of Chaos Demon God was an anomaly. Now that he was born, he had the cultivation of Daluo Taoist priests. This made him a minor anomaly to a major anomaly. A major anomaly could not be left alive. Rumble. A bolt of innate lightning struck and shattered the Tao light on the innate God, making his image appear clearly in front of everyone. Yes, he had the same innate Tao aptitude as everyone else. He was as handsome and perfect as everyone else. However, there was an additional vertical pupil between his eyebrows. It was a chaotic divine eye that was surrounded by chaotic chi. Behind his back, there was also a pair of huge chaotic wings that flowed with an endless amount of chaotic energy. When his wings spread out, they were like a sky curtain. They were not much smaller than the wings of Kuinpong. Yuan. Inexplicably, a message appeared in everyone's mind, letting them know the name of this innate god. Yuan. It was a very impressive name. Yuan, the origin of heaven and earth. It had the meaning of the beginning of a yuan and the renewal of all things. This innate god had this name, which showed that he was extraordinary. He was probably second only to the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Rumble. Another bolt of innate divine lightning struck down, bringing with it a world-destroying energy wave that swept towards Yuan. Kill! Yuan opened his mouth. This was the first sentence he said after his birth. However, it was not his name, but the extremely cold word kill. Kill if you want to live. Amidst his cold words, Yuan's dermic powers surged. The power of the Taoist priest spread out, and the faint shadow of the chaos demon god appeared behind him. Rumble. The innate lightning struck, but it was blocked by the chaos demon god behind Yuan. Both sides perished together and returned to nothingness. Yuan had safely passed the first heavenly tribulation. However, there were a total of 9 heavenly tribulations. Yuan had only passed the first one. It was still unknown whether he could pass the second and the next few. Yuan's future was still uncertain. Rumble. After the first innate lightning struck, the second one followed closely behind and struck with a loud bang. Break. Yuan's face turned cold. Behind him, a group of true Panga phantoms appeared. Feng Zichin, the 3 pure ones, Great Emperor Ziwei, and the others were among them. Rumble. The second innate lightning struck, but it was blocked by the phantoms of the crowd and protected Yuan. On the side, Feng Zichin and the others saw this scene, and their faces darkened. To be born from their blood, this alone was already too much. But now, the other party could even create their phantoms to fight against the enemy. This made everyone feel abnormally disgusted. If this continued, would Yuan be able to trace back to the origin and directly derive everyone's bloodline, and then take away a part of everyone's fate? It was too disgusting. Thinking of this, the true Panga members all had the intention to kill Yuan. How could he let an outsider take a share of his luck when he was not related to him? How could there be such a logic in the world? When the killing intent arose, karma was born. In a trance, Feng Zichin, the 3 pure ones, and the others all had a strange feeling in their hearts. It was as if they could interfere with Yuan's heavenly tribulation if they wanted to. No one could interfere with the heavenly tribulation. This was common sense. But now, common sense was broken. What did this mean? It meant that Yuan's human tribulation had arrived. Only a tribulation could interfere with the tribulation. Yuan was born with everyone's blood, and he had formed a great karma with everyone. When Yuan was born, everyone had the intention to kill him. The heavenly path sensed it and automatically sensed it, giving everyone a chance to end the karma. How to end it? That was to let everyone become Yuan's human tribulation, so as to prevent his birth. Of course, it was not necessarily to prevent his birth. They could use other methods. As for how to do it, it still depended on everyone's opinions. The heavenly path could not force them. Rumble. While everyone was thinking, the 3rd Khanate divine thunder had already struck. The vertical eye between Yuan's eyebrows suddenly opened, releasing a gray, chaotic divine light, which blasted the Khanate divine thunder into pieces. Seeing this, Feng Zichin and the others knew that they could not hesitate any longer. If they waited any longer, when Yuan passed the heavenly tribulation, the human tribulation would also be over. If they wanted to attack him again, the price would be too high. Thinking of this, Feng Zichin's mind moved, and an inexplicable force gushed out of his body, spreading into the distance and merging with the 4th Khanate divine thunder that was about to strike. Rumble. When the 4th Khanate divine thunder struck, Yuan spread out his wings like a cloud in the sky, stirring up endless chaotic chi, which turned into a storm and stirred up the fourth Khanate divine thunder into pieces. However, although the Khanate divine thunder was shattered, Feng Zichen's force was not. The inexplicable wave went all the way down, ignoring the turbulent chaotic storm, and directly fell on Yuan's body. Silently, a mysterious force was extracted from Yuan's body, causing his strength to drop a little. At the same time, the illusory image of Feng Zichen behind Yuan disappeared without a sound. That's right, the force that was extracted from Yuan's body just now was Feng Zichen's bloodline power. It was fine to kill Yuan, but before that, the first thing to do was to extract his bloodline power from him. Otherwise, it would be disgusting if Yuan was resurrected one day. After Feng Zichen, the rest of the people followed suit. Each of them used their own means to merge with the fifth Khanate divine thunder, trying to retrieve their bloodline power from Yuan's body. Rumble. When the fifth Khanate divine thunder struck, a large seal suddenly appeared in Yuan's hand. He threw it high into the air, carrying supreme divine power, and collided with the fifth Khanate divine thunder. In the next moment, the silhouettes of endless mountain ranges appeared. Each mountain was taller than the previous one, and an ancient and desolate aura assaulted his senses. This was Yuan's lifelong spiritual treasure, the supreme-grade Khanate spiritual treasure seal of mountains and rivers, which had 43 Khanate divine seals. This seal was formed after the collapse of Mount Buzhou, the last origin of the Khanate ancestral vein spirit, and the essence of thousands of mountains. As the name suggested, the seal of mountains and rivers gathered the power of mountains and rivers in one body, and had the power to control the mountains and rivers of heaven and earth. After being hit by the seal, the fifth Khanate divine thunder was directly smashed into pieces. However, the power of the crowd ignored the seal of mountains and rivers and added to Yuan's body. Ah! Suddenly, Yuan let out a shrill scream. His strength was rapidly decreasing, and he was being extracted by an inexplicable force. Behind him, the shadows of the saints that symbolized his noble birth were shattered one after another. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. At this moment, other than the shadow of the chaos demon god, there was only the shadow of Mount Buzhou behind him. And this shadow of Mount Buzhou was the last remaining mark of the Pangu divine branch on Yuan's body. If possible, the crowd really wanted to cut off this mark of Mount Buzhou from Yuan's body, and completely cut off his connection with the Pangu divine branch. Unfortunately, this was Yuan's foundation and also a gift from Mount Buzhou. With the strength of the crowd, it was possible to kill him, but it was difficult to cut off this mark. Boom! When the power of the crowd's bloodline was completely extracted from Yuan's body, his body suddenly shook, and his strength began to decline. From the level of the Daluo Taoist priests, he fell to the level of the Tai Taoist lord. After the crowd extracted their bloodline power, Yuan's origin was reduced by at least 1/3. After losing so much of his origin, it would be strange if his strength did not plummet. And after this, the chain reaction caught Yuan off guard. Originally, Yuan only needed to survive the heavenly tribulation to reach the level of the Daluo Taoist priests. But now, it seemed like this would become an extravagant hope. After this, for the time being, the level of the Daluo Taoist priests would not be fated with him. Just as Yuan was in a daze, the sixth bolt of Khanate divine thunder struck. This bolt of Khanate divine thunder came very quickly and was very powerful, but it still did not hurt Yuan. It was blocked by the shadow of Mount Buzhou behind him. And after this bolt of Khanate divine thunder, the power of the heavenly tribulation also decreased because of Yuan's strength. Rumble! The seventh bolt of Khanate divine thunder struck. Yuan, who had regained his senses, took out a long spear and pointed it at the sky. In an instant, a great destructive Taoist rhyme spread out wildly, destroying everything. The seventh bolt of Khanate divine thunder was destroyed by the Taoist rhyme before it could take effect. It was a top-tier Khanate spiritual treasure, the Great Spear of Destruction. This was a connate spiritual treasure born from the power of destruction that emerged after the collapse of Mount Bujo and the remaining power of the chaos demon god. There were 45 connate divine seals in it, and it had the power to destroy everything. It was another killing treasure. Indeed, Yuan was very extraordinary. He actually had 2 supreme-grade connate spiritual treasures, as expected of the innate saint born from Mount Bujo. Very powerful. With the seal of mountains and rivers above his head and the great spear of destruction in his hand, and the shadows of Mount Bujo and the chaos demon god alternating behind him, Yuan was indeed extraordinary and had the possibility of attaining the Tao. But unfortunately, his death was already sealed. This was because the true Panga lineage didn't want Yuan to live. In the beginning, everyone's hatred for Yuan came from the blood of the chaos demon god in his body. However, when they saw their figures appear behind Yuan, they made up their minds to kill him. Their bloodline could not be blasphemed. In this world, any living being who dared to blaspheme their bloodline should not exist. It was the same even if their bloodline was extracted. With this thought in mind, everyone tacitly used their divine abilities to increase the power of the heavenly tribulation. Boom! As lightning flashed, the 8th bolt of Kane divine thunder that carried everyone's power slowly took shape. At this moment, Yuan was completely unaware of the danger. With a precious treasure in his hand, he was already certain that he would successfully survive the heavenly tribulation and descend into the world. Rumble! The innate divine lightning struck down, and Yuan smiled confidently. He held the great destruction spear in his hand and formed a scene of endless destruction as he stabbed it forward. P.S. Double monthly votes tomorrow. Begging for monthly votes. The tree at the door was blown away by the typhoon. Chapter 8:25. Boom! The spear collided with the connate lightning, and the power of destruction surged, easily shattering the connate lightning into pieces. However, at the moment when the connate lightning was destroyed, several mighty holy auras descended, directly crushing the power of destruction and enveloping Yuan at an extremely fast speed. Before he could let out a scream, Yuan's body began to disintegrate silently, turning into the purest essence energy of heaven and earth that scattered in all directions. At the same time, his connate true spirit was also shattering into specks of light that dissipated. Yuan had died. He did not die from the heavenly tribulation, but from the human tribulation. He was killed by Feng Zichen, the 3 pure ones, and the other Panga true disciples. Yes, it was very tragic, but also very impressive. Throughout the history of the Eldritch world, Yuan was the only one who could be killed by Feng Zichen, the 3 pure ones, and the other Panga true disciples. This was also a kind of glory. If word got out, it would definitely be recorded in the history of the Eldritch world. It was just that Yuan would definitely not like this glory. However, Yuan did not have the chance to speak now. He who had not reached the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests was really dead if he died. There was no possibility of resurrection if he was killed by everyone together. Yuan was already a thing of the past. He would probably set a record as the shortest connate saint in the Eldritch world. He died as soon as he was born. Seeing that Yuan was really dead, everyone's cold expressions slowly disappeared. They withdrew their power and used supreme magic power to destroy the bloodline power that was extracted from Yuan's body. This bloodline had already been blasphemed, so of course everyone would not take it back into their bodies, nor would they allow it to exist in the outside world. Therefore, destroying it was the best choice. After doing all this, as the oldest Pangu true disciple here, the Grand Pure One thought for a while, and was about to make a conclusion. Fellow Taoists, the one who blasphemed the bloodline of Father God is dead. At this moment, Feng Zichen seemed to have sensed something and suddenly frowned. He felt that something was wrong. Now that Yuan was dead, not only did he not feel relieved, but a bigger shadow appeared in his heart, as if something bad was about to happen. At the same time, Feng Zichen also noticed that after Yuan died, the power he inherited from the legacy of Mount Buzhou did not dissipate, nor did it flow to Taoist Buzhou. Instead, it stayed where it was, as if it was waiting for something. Could it be that Yuan didn't die? This was impossible. If everyone attacked together, even primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian would die, let alone primordial chaos Tao Lord who had yet to reach the level of Taoist priests. Killing him would be as easy as flipping one's hand. There was no chance of survival. Even if Yuan was very special, it was the same. He was definitely dead. It was impossible for him to still be alive. But what was going on with the abnormality in front of him? With doubts in his heart, Feng Zichen looked towards the place where Yuan had fallen. Then he discovered a strange scene. He saw the mountain river seal and the great spear of destruction floating in the air motionlessly, with layers of Tao runes around them. Beside these two Dharma treasures was the essence Qi of heaven and earth that Yuan had turned into after his death. They did not dissipate and merged into heaven and earth. Instead, they were suppressed by the two Dharma treasures and were stagnant on the spot. As he continued to look, he saw that there were specks of light floating in the essence Qi of heaven and earth, emitting flickering Tao lights. Those were the fragments of the connate true spirit that Yuan had shattered. They did not dissipate and return to heaven and earth. Instead, they continued to be tightly entangled with the essence Qi of heaven and earth that Yuan had turned into after his death. This is, with doubts in his heart, Feng Zichen could not help but interrupt the Grand Pure One. Wait, fellow Taoists, look, the situation has changed. Hearing that, everyone hurriedly looked in the direction that Feng Zichen indicated. Then they saw a strange scene. Like Feng Zichen, the three Pure Ones and the others did not understand what was going on. However, there were two people present who seemed to have seen through the trick. They actually shouted in unison, "Brother, you're the one who's going to die. Creation of living beings." From the voices, it was the Lady of Earth and Nuwa. Creation of living beings was not a strange term. Everyone understood what it meant when they heard it. It was the creation of life. According to the Lady of Earth and Nuwa, after Yuan died, his true spirit did not dissipate. It was actually nurturing living beings and recreating life. This, can I kill him? After killing Yuan, I will use his essence to create a new living being. Although it will no longer be the previous Yuan, this new living being can inherit everything from Yuan. It was equivalent to a different kind of eternal life. His body would not be destroyed, his true spirit would not be destroyed, and his essence would not be destroyed. However, a person's core intelligence would change. It shouldn't be to the extent of changing the core and not the outer core. With a thought, everyone stared at the ball of essence Qi of heaven and earth. If it was really as everyone had guessed, then this Yuan was a little strange. He did not look like a normal living being. All of them had intellect, and everything else could be destroyed. However, this Yuan was the complete opposite of others. If his essence was not destroyed, his intelligence could be destroyed at any time. Such a living being could no longer be described as strange. No one doubted the truth of the Lady of Earth and Nuwa's words. This was because the two of them were supreme masters of the creation Tao. The Lady of Earth was known as the Mother of Earth. She had comprehended the creation Tao of nurturing all living beings from the earth's virtuous bearing. On the other hand, Goddess Nuwa needed the earth to create humans and living beings. She traced the true essence of living beings and understood the creation Tao of creating life from the evolution of all living beings. Two top-notch existences of the creation Tao had said at the same time that Yuan's essence was in the creation of living beings. How could it be false? One person might be wrong, but how could two people be wrong at the same time? While everyone was puzzled, the ruins of Mount Buzhou changed again. In the deepest part of the ruins of Mount Buzhou, where the Chaos Fiend God was originally sealed, an extremely dense aura of destruction suddenly emerged. In the center of this aura of destruction, everyone saw streaks of holy brilliance circulating, exuding an astonishing aura of creation. Connate divine light of creation. As the saying went, when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. In the extreme power of destruction, a wisp of the purest vitality was born. Connate divine light of creation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The connate divine light of creation flashed and surged toward the place where Yuan had fallen, brushing against the heaven and earth essence chi that he had turned into after his death. Then an astonishing change happened. Wisps of vitality spread out from the heaven and earth essence chi. Then, under the influence of an unknown force, the heaven and earth essence chi began to gather again and gradually formed a human figure. Boom! 2 hands appeared, one holding the great spear of destruction and the other holding the great mountain river seal. Then a pair of legs appeared and stood in the void. As soon as the limbs appeared, a body appeared, followed by a head. Gradually, a face that was identical to Yuan's appeared before everyone's eyes. However, although the face was the same, everyone knew that this was not the Yuan from before. He was already dead. This new Yuan had the same body, but his soul was completely different. Everyone watched silently as the new Yuan was born and did not interfere. Firstly, this new Yuan did not have their bloodline aura in his body, so everyone had lost their reason to attack. Secondly, the fate of this new Yuan was the same as his predecessors. They were both destined to die, without a doubt. Everyone knew this, which was why they had been watching his birth coldly from the sidelines. He did not die from the heavenly tribulation or the human tribulation, but from an accident. After this living being was born, his strength was only at the connate Tao Lord level, which was the conventional standard of an innate saint. He did not have any heaven-defying performance. Therefore, he would not suffer a heavenly tribulation. After they had taken action and retracted their bloodline, everyone had lost the chance to continue attacking Yuan. Therefore, he did not suffer a human tribulation. However, he had an unexpected tribulation. How could the divine powers of Feng Zichen, the 3 pure ones, and the others be so easy to deal with? Yuan was only a Tao, Lord of Tai. In front of their power, he did not even have the chance to resist before he was killed. After Yuan was killed, this power did not completely dissipate. It remained there, fusing with the heaven-earth Yuan Qi that Yuan turned into after his death. In other words, after the new Yuan was born, this power lay dormant in his body. It was like a bomb that could explode at any time. Rumble. Flowers fell from the sky. Golden lotuses sprouted from the ground, and endless divine light filled the world as if it was covered with a thin layer of golden gauze. It was exceptionally beautiful. Another anomaly, another anomaly. This was the phenomenon of the birth of an innate saint. This meant that the new Yuan was about to be born. However, at this moment, an unimaginable wave of energy exploded in Yuan's body, directly shattering his body and crushing his connate true spirit. After suffering such a heavy blow, the newly born Yuan did not even have time to breathe the air of the 3 realms before he followed in his predecessor's footsteps and died. The second Yuan was dead. Rumble! With the death of the second Yuan, the entire ruins of Mount Buzhou shook, revealing a mournful feeling that reverberated through the space. At the same time, more connate divine light of creation surged, madly surging into the heaven-earth Yuan Qi that was formed after the death of the second Yuan. Soon, the third Yuan was born. Like the second Yuan, his hands had finished evolving and reached out from the heaven-earth Yuan Qi. He held the great spear of destruction in one hand and the great seal of mountains and rivers in the other, as if he was afraid that someone would snatch them away. Rumble! Heaven and earth shook again. The phenomenon that had just receded, flowers falling from the sky and golden lotuses sprouted from the ground, appeared again. Following closely behind the 2 was the endless golden light. However, Although the scale of this phenomenon seemed large, it was much smaller than before. It was no longer the treatment of an innate saint, but the treatment of a top-tier Khanate god-fiend. Clearly, the 2 consecutive heavy blows had caused a portion of Yuan's origin to dissipate. As a result, the 3rd Yuan was no longer an innate saint, but a top-tier Khanate god-fiend. His level had dropped by 1. It seemed to be only 1 level, but the difference was boundless. How should one put it? One could see the difference from those who had achieved their Tao. Those who had achieved their Tao, such as Feng Zichen, Sanqing, Hutu, and Nuwa, were all innate saints. None of them were top-tier Khanate god-fiends. Just this point alone was enough to see the huge gap between them. Under the constant nourishment of the Khanate divine light of creation, the 3rd Yuan was quickly born. Unfortunately, his fate was no different from the previous 2 Yuan. He still couldn't escape the fate of death. There was a loud boom. A majestic saint aura erupted, shattering the 3rd Yuan's body and innate true spirit into pieces. The 3rd Yuan was dead. However, with the death of the 3rd Yuan, the remaining power of the crowd had weakened significantly. They wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. It was unknown whether it would be Yuan's origin that gave out first, or the remaining power of the crowd that gave out first. Buzz, buzz, buzz. With the death of the 3rd Yuan, the Mount Buzhou ruins trembled even more violently. The mournful feeling became even more obvious. The howling of the wind could be heard, as if the ruins of Mount Buzhou were crying. In the next moment, the ruins of Mount Buzhou seemed to be enraged. Waves of destruction surged from the depths of the ruins and swept toward the outside world, destroying everything around them. That terrifying explosion of power caused even the most powerful experts to have a change in expression as they quietly retreated. Only primordial chaos experts could continue to stand where they were without any change in expression. Boom, boom, boom. When the waves of destruction surged to the extreme, the Khanate divine light of creation contained in Yuan's body gushed out at the same time, brushing toward the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth that had been formed after the death of the 3rd Yuan. Seeing this, Feng Zichen and the others couldn't help but frown. With such a powerful Khanate divine light of creation, their remaining power wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, after being destroyed 3 times in a row, Yuan's origin had also changed. As the saying went, things should not happen more than 3 times. The Khanate divine demons that had been born 3 times in a row had all died. At this moment, even with the support of so many Khanate divine lights of creation, Yuan's origin couldn't breed new Khanate divine demons. Every Khanate divine light of creation that brushed down would merge with a fragment of Yuan's true spirit, then carry a part of Yuan's origin and evolve into little life forms. Seeing this, Feng Zichen and the others narrowed their eyes subconsciously. Seeing that it couldn't breed new Khanate divine demons, Yuan's origin changed its strategy. It no longer bred new Khanate divine demons, but divided the origin to breed little life forms, giving birth to a race. This was the Yuan clan, a race created by the Khanate origin after the death of the Khanate divine Yuan. They belonged to the Khanate race and were considered a Khanate race. At the same time, they inherited the power of the Pengu divine branch and the Chaos demon divine branch and were abnormally powerful. Moreover, the Yuan clan was probably the first Khanate race to be born in the 3 realms. It was also a good fortune. At this thought, Feng Zichen and the others silently calculated. They realized that even if they detonated all of their remaining power, they wouldn't be able to kill all of the Yuan clan beings. The birth of the Yuan clan was inevitable. Thinking of this, they gave up on killing the Yuan clan and started thinking about how to scheme against them and use them for their own purposes. Possessing 2 great bloodlines at the same time, the Yuan clan was definitely very powerful and one of the top Khanate races. Suddenly, the human Tao Emperor's seal began to tremble violently in Feng Zichen's, sea of consciousness. Chaotic chi surged out, forming mysterious images. P.S. To be honest, I want to release more chapters too. Don't I know that the royalties will double after I release more chapters? But up until now, I've basically written original works. I've been thinking about the plot every day, so I can't release more chapters at all. Moreover, when I wrote this book, I didn't expect to write so many words at all. I've already used up the outline. I can't promise anything, but I can say that I'll release as many chapters as possible if conditions permit. Chapter 8:26. The Chaos Bead. These images came from the Chaos Bead. The human Tao Emperor seal had been refined from Panga's fingerbone, so it wouldn't use chaos energy at all. Only the Chaos Bead at the core of the seal would use chaos energy. Whoosh! Images flashed past, appearing clearly in front of Feng Zichen's eyes. That was what he saw made Feng Zichen frown involuntarily. He saw a strange race with 3 eyes and a pair of connate wings on their backs, fighting the humans. Feng Zichen recognized their origins. They were the Yuan race, a connate race that had been reborn after Yuan's fall. Their appearances were extremely similar to Yuan. However, the divine eye on Yuan's forehead was the Chaos Divine Eye. The divine eye on the Yuan race's forehead was the connate divine eye. The wings on Yuan's back were the Chaos wings. The wings on the Yuan race's back were the connate wings. Although the gap between Chaos and connate wasn't as big as the gap between connate and acquired, it wasn't small either. Clearly, the Yuan race that had been reborn after Yuan's fall had degraded an entire level of bloodline. However, this wasn't Feng Zichen's focus. No matter how miraculous the Yuan race was, it had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. What he really cared about was why the Yuan race was fighting with the humans. Puzzled, Feng Zichen continued to watch. Then he saw a scene that shook his heart. One by one, the Yuan race's Daluo Taoist priests walked out of the void and fought with the human Taoist priests. The 2 sides fought in the chaos beyond the heavens. Terrifying shockwaves from their divine arts exploded, causing chaos energy to churn and set off terrifying chaos tides. At the same time, the humans' fortunes shook even more violently as the 2 sides fought. It felt like a great building was about to collapse. Was the Yuan race attacking the humans? Faintly, Feng Zichen seemed to understand something. These scenes originated from the future and were reflected by the Chaos Bead. The primal Chaos Bead was the strongest treasure in the Tao of time and space. Whether it was the outer realm or the great desolate realm, there was no other treasure stronger than it. Under the true Tao, time and space were number 1. And the Chaos Bead was precisely the human race's most precious treasure. The birth of the Yuan race made the Chaos Bead sense a threat. As a result, it began to operate on its own, searching for the origin of this threat in the endless future. Then he saw the possibility of the human race being attacked by the Yuan race from the countless possibilities, so he projected it in front of Feng Zichen. As a supreme treasure of the Tao of time and space, projecting the future was a simple matter. The Chaos Bead could easily do it without anyone noticing. In addition, the Chaos Bead was probably the only treasure in the primordial world that could freely enter and exit the river of space-time. In the past, Feng Zichen had not noticed it. However, when he broke through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian and continued to explore the remaining fragments of the Chaos Bead to completely restore it, he realized that it was probably impossible for him to restore the Chaos Bead in this life. This was because the largest part of the Chaos Bead's origin was actually used by Pangu to derive the river of spacetime. In other words, unless Feng Zichen could destroy the river of spacetime, he would definitely not be able to restore the Chaos Bead. After realizing this, Feng Zichen gave up on the idea of restoring the Chaos Bead. Destroying the river of spacetime? What a joke! Not to mention that he did not have the ability to do so. Even if he did, he would not dare to do it. Did he really think that Pangu was dead? If he dared to do it, there might be a bright axelight at the end of the river of spacetime that would send him to meet the chaos demon Celestial. However, although he could not restore the chaos bead, through this matter, Feng Zichen discovered that using the resonance between the chaos bead and its origin, he could freely enter and exit the river of spacetime. This discovery comforted Feng Zichen's injured heart. It was better to have something than nothing. The Yuan race is really interesting. In his sea of consciousness, the great divination of divination was running wildly. Soon, Feng Zichen figured out all the reasons. The birth of the Yuan race was actually facilitated by the heavenly Tao. It was no wonder that the appearance of the Yuan race could hide from everyone's perception. With the heavenly Tao taking action, it was naturally difficult for everyone to detect everything about the Yuan race. And the purpose of the heavenly Tao was simple. It was to promote the birth of the Yuan race. Then, through the Yuan race, it would curb the development of the human race. The human race was developing too quickly. Not only did it make the saints nervous, but even the heavenly Tao was afraid. The heavenly Tao valued balance the most. When it discovered that the human race no longer had a natural enemy and their strength began to expand wildly, gradually breaking the balance, it should think of a way to balance the human race. And the Yuan race was the solution that the heavenly Tao thought of. They were a special, innate race that possessed the bloodlines of both the Panga divine system and the primal chaos divine system, and were the first innate race to be born in the three realms. The Yuan race was special, and they were born with great fortune. In the era of the three realms, the Yuan race, who was supported by the luck of the three realms, would definitely usher in a great opportunity. And the heavenly Tao's plan was to do its best to support the Yuan race and strengthen them. The heavenly Tao did not want the Yuan race to surpass the human race. That was unrealistic and impossible. Its purpose was very simple. It wanted to slow down the development of the human race by strengthening the Yuan race. The human race was developing too quickly. It should be appropriate to stop and rest. However, the human race was diligent and unwilling to stop and rest. Left with no choice, the heavenly Tao could only take action, personally, to let the human race rest. As for the scene that Feng Zichen saw just now, the Yuan race attacking the human race and shaking the luck of the human race, that was not the real future. It was just that among the countless futures, the human race's situation was the worst and the most difficult to happen. The Chaos Bead deliberately chose this possibility because it was afraid that Feng Zichen would not pay much attention to the Yuan race. Therefore, it projected the worst scene so that Feng Zichen would pay attention to it. The Chaos Bead was indeed the supreme treasure of the human race. It was considerate of the human race in all aspects. It even noticed such a small detail. It was thoughtful. The human race had developed to this point, and its foundation was deep enough. It was second only to the shaman and demon race at their peak. If it was overthrown by a small Yuan race that did not even have a connate god fiend, it would be the biggest joke in the primordial world. Not to mention Feng Zichen. Even the heavenly Tao did not dare to think so. Otherwise, he wouldn't have created the Yuan race to keep the human race in check. The Yuan race was just a stumbling block that the heavenly Tao used to hinder the development of the human race. The human race's true opponent was still the demon race. A centipede died, but did not fall down. The heavenly Tao's focus was still on the demon race. It planned to nurture the demon race again, and use them to deal with the human race. The so-called Yuan race was just a tool used by the king to buy time for the demon race to develop. After thinking through all of this, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh in his heart. The heavenly Tao is indeed the heavenly Tao. In the end, I still underestimated it. To be honest, the heavenly Tao's operation was really a show of strength to Feng Zichen. It let him know who the real boss of the primordial world was. In this wave, the heavenly Tao had predicted all of everyone's predictions in advance. It had calculated that everyone would not let Yuan be born and would definitely think of a way to kill it. Therefore, The heavenly Tao was at ease and boldly nurtured Yuan, a special Khanate god fiend that was destined to die. All of their actions were within the heavenly Tao's calculations. In fact, the heavenly Tao had even predicted the matter of snatching the number one living being in advance. At this moment, Feng Zichen could not help but feel a little regretful. If he had known about the heavenly Tao's plan, he would not have let Taoist Buzhou fight for first place that day. If Yuan had the luck of the number one living being, he might have survived today's death tribulation and truly been born. In that case, things would be much simpler. A person was easier to deal with than a group of people. Although Yuan was difficult to deal with, Feng Zichen had Taoist Buzhou and was confident that he could suppress him for the rest of his life. However, it was much harder to suppress the Yuan race than to suppress a person. The heavenly Tao would really give Feng Zichen a difficult problem. If the heavenly Tao's plan really succeeded, then the human race would be passive. Unfortunately, although the heavenly Tao's plan was perfect, it still missed out. It did not expect that Feng Zichen actually had the space-time treasure, the chaos bead. The heavenly Tao's perfect plan was accidentally seen through by the chaos bead, allowing Feng Zichen to sense the flaw. Now, the Yuan race had not been born, which meant that the heavenly Tao's plan had not succeeded. This gave Feng Zichen a lot of room to operate. As he thought about it, Feng Zichen already had the idea of destroying the heavenly Tao's plan. Didn't the heavenly Tao want the Yuan race to be born to check and balance the development of the human race? Feng Zichen did not want it to do as it wished. He wanted to stop the birth of the Yuan race to destroy the heavenly Tao's plan. This did not mean that Feng Zichen wanted to kill the Yuan race. This method was too crude and cruel. It did not match his character. Moreover, the price of doing so was too high, killing a newly born innate race, and it was also an innate race that inherited the legacy of Mount Buzhou. If Feng Zichen really dared to do so, then he would probably welcome the last anger of Mount Buzhou. The terrifying power of the backlash might not be able to kill him, but it would definitely not let him have an easy time. It would be light if he was half dead. No matter how conceited Feng Zichen was, he would not think that his luck was higher than Mount Buzhou's and that he could withstand its backlash without being injured. Therefore, Feng Zichen did not want to kill the Yuan race. There was no need to kill the Yuan race because Feng Zichen had a better way to deal with the Yuan race. After recovering from his thoughts, Feng Zichen suddenly took a step forward and said with a cold expression, "The bloodline of Pangu is supreme and cannot be blasphemed. Even the heavenly Tao cannot do that." As he spoke, Feng Zichen spread out his hands. The magic power in his body surged and absorbed the power of heaven and earth from all directions. It turned into the purest Khanate origin and swept in the direction of the birth of the Yuan race. Turning the power of heaven and earth into origin was the method of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Rumble. The power of heaven and earth origin spread out, and the vitality of heaven and earth that gave birth to the Yuan race was impacted and immediately shook violently. Crack! Crack! Affected by this, some of the divine fetuses of the Yuan race cracked as if they were about to split open. Rumble! The heavenly Tao was furious, and endless Khanate lightning filled the air. The ruins of Mount Buzhou were also furious, and there was a fierce roar. Great destructive power spewed out as if it was going to destroy heaven and earth. These scenes were targeted at Feng Zichen. They were warning him to immediately stop what he was doing and not to attack the Yuan race. But in the face of these two threats, Feng Zichen was completely unmoved. He continued to transform the origin of heaven and earth and rushed to the place where the Yuan race was born. Crack! Crack! The cracking sounds from afar became denser. More divine fetuses of the Yuan race were shattered, but they did not die because of this. They just became weak. Therefore, although the heavenly Tao and the ruins of Mount Buzhou were angry, they did not really attack Feng Zichen. They only kept increasing their power to put pressure on Feng Zichen. To be honest, the Heavenly Tao and the ruins of Mount Buzhou were also afraid. They were afraid that Feng Zichen did not have the intention to kill the Yuan race. He was just weakening the origin of the Yuan race or delaying the birth of the Yuan race. But as they attacked Feng Zichen, it stimulated his rebellious mentality, forcing him to make up his mind to attack the Yuan race. Therefore, the Heavenly Tao and the ruins of Mount Buzhou did not dare to attack Feng Zichen. The rest of the people looked at the scene in front of them in confusion. They did not know what was wrong with Feng Zichen and why he suddenly attacked the Yuan race. However, the Grand Pure One, who had the highest realm, saw Feng Zichen's actions. He frowned and pondered. At a certain moment, when cracks appeared on all the divine fetuses of the Yuan race, Feng Zichen felt that it was about time. He withdrew his power and stopped transforming the origin of heaven and earth. Instead, he used his divine ability to guide the origin of heaven and earth that he had transformed into through the cracks on the divine fetuses of the Yuan race, surging into the living beings inside. Buzz, buzz, buzz after absorbing the origin of heaven and earth. The Yuan race living beings in the divine fetuses, who had become extremely weak, suddenly surged with powerful vitality. With their origins strengthened, they were undoubtedly stronger. Feng Zichen's strange actions puzzled the onlookers. What was going on this time? Wasn't he going to attack the Yuan race? Why did he suddenly strengthen the origin of the Yuan race? Was he going to help the Yuan race so that they could be born in a stronger state? This is, unlike the onlookers, Goddess Nuwa and Goddess Hutabo thought of a possibility after seeing Feng Zichen's actions. Their expressions became strange. Extract. After all the origin of heaven and earth had been absorbed by the Yuan race living beings, Feng Zichen's divine ability changed again. He used the origin of heaven and earth as a guide to forcibly extract the Pangu bloodline from the Yuan race living beings' bodies. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone gasped. So this was what it meant when he said that the Pangu bloodline could not be blasphemed. He was forcibly extracting the Pangu bloodline from the Yuan race living beings. He had vented his anger, but would the Heavenly Tao allow it? Boom! In the next moment, the Heavenly Tao was enraged. A purple vertical eye appeared and stared coldly at Feng Zichen. Heavenly Tao, you've gone too far. Blaspheming the Pangu bloodline is making an enemy of the Pangu bloodline. Even if you're the Heavenly Tao, you can't bear this price. P.S. Brothers, I beg for monthly votes. On the monthly votes list, this book is being pressed to the ground by a new book. Damn it, I don't know whether to be happy or sad. It's the end of the month. I have a wish. I want 2,000 monthly votes. Can you satisfy me? Chapter 8:27. Great Emperor Ziwei stepped forward and stood between the heavenly path and Feng Zichen. The aura around him surged, resonating with the untainted world and the boundless starry sky, emitting boundless pressure. At this moment, Great Emperor Ziwei had Panga's righteousness. Even when facing the heavenly path, he showed no fear. Being threatened like this, the heavenly path was naturally enraged. The innate lightning that gathered in the sky became even more powerful, emitting a world-destroying pressure. However, Great Emperor Ziwei's merits were too great. Even if he looked down on the heavenly path could only scare him a little. It didn't dare to attack him. He glanced at the heavenly path indifferently. Seeing that it had no intention of attacking, Great Emperor Ziwei turned around and faced Feng Zichen with his back facing the heavenly path. He completely ignored the heavenly path's threat. When this invincible stance landed in the eyes of the crowd, it caused another wave of gasps. Invincible. This attitude was simply invincible. Who in the untainted world dared to look down on the heavenly path like this? Not even the 3 pure ones dared, let alone the 2 sages of the West. Only Great Emperor Ziwei dared to do so. Everyone's amazement didn't affect great Emperor Ziwei at all. He turned his head and silently observed the Yuan clan's divine fetus for a while. Suddenly he also made his move. Raising his head slightly, great Emperor Ziwei hugged the air with both hands. Suddenly, in the boundless starry sky, the two supreme stars, the great Yin and the great Yang, sensed it at the same time. They dropped a shocking amount of starlight and surged into his arms. In just an instant, the shadows of the sun and the moon appeared in great Emperor Ziwei's arms, one after another. They rotated continuously in the form of a taiji diagram. When the starlight accumulated to the limit, great Emperor Ziwei spread his hands and pushed forward. The powerful power of the sun and the moon flew out of his hands and swept toward the Yuan clan's divine fetus. Accept Yin and Yang, turn heaven and earth, rotate the sun and the moon. After pushing out the power of the sun and the moon, great Emperor Ziwei didn't stop. Instead, he moved his hands continuously and chanted. As he moved, the moment the taiji diagram of the sun and the moon approached the Yuan clan's divine fetus, it suddenly dispersed and turned into a huge taiji diagram, enveloping the Yuan clan's divine fetus. Rumble, the sun and moon tai chi art spun slowly, and the power of heaven and earth in the surroundings surged towards the tai chi art. The Tai Chi art refined them into the purest innate Yin and Yang power and poured into the Yuan race's divine embryo. The Yuan divine fetus, which had been extremely weak because Feng Ziqin had forcibly extracted Panga's bloodline, gradually stabilized with the help of the power of Yin and Yang. Seizing this opportunity, Feng Ziqin increased the power in his hand by 30% and extracted the Panga bloodline from the Yuan race divine embryo even faster. Buzz, 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 as the Yuan race's divine embryos trembled. Feng Ziqin could see drops of purple divine blood being extracted from their bodies. The purple divine blood was Panga's blood. The Panga's blood could be said to be the origin of the Yuan race's divine embryos. Now that it had been forcibly extracted by Feng Ziqin, it was easy to imagine the impact it would have on them. Even with great Emperor Ziwei's innate power of Yin and Yang to maintain their vitality, they were gradually showing signs of collapse. Rumble. Sensing that the Yuan race was in mortal danger, the heavenly law was still hesitating whether or not to attack great Emperor Ziwei. On the other side, the ruins of Mount Buzhou could wait no longer. The tides of cataclysm surged out in all directions, sweeping toward Feng Ziqin and great Emperor Ziwei. This is troublesome. Frowning slightly, Feng Ziqin's mind flickered, and the human Tao imperial seal appeared. It turned into a finger bone that pierced through the heavens and the earth. It pointed at the surging tide of cataclysm and scattered it. At the same time, the mighty power of Pangu emanated from the finger bone, suppressing all the discontent in the ruins of Mount Buzhou. Power of the 5 elements, come! Sensing the Yuan race divine embryo's instability, great Emperor Ziwei made his move again. He first drew in the power of the 5 primary stars of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Next, he drew in the power of the 4 constellations and the North Star, merging them with the starlight of the 5 elements and ascending as the power of the 5 elements. The cycle of the 5 elements gave birth to creation. As soon as the power of the 5 elements descended, it evolved into the power of creation of the 5 elements and surged into the bodies of the Yuan race divine embryos, stabilizing their life origin. At the same time, Feng Ziqin's divine ability changed again. Endless runes intertwined, and a holy light circulated. A pure power of creation emanated from his hand. This was the supreme divine ability, ranked first among the 36 great divine abilities of the Heavenly Dipper. Creation manipulation. It was also the divine ability that Queen Niwa had used to create the human race. Today, Feng Ziqin used it. His purpose was self-evident. He wanted to use this divine ability to create a new race. The power of creation surged and spread out from Feng Ziqin's hand. acting on the Panga bloodline that he had extracted from the Yuan race divine embryo. That's right. Feng Zichen wanted to use the Panga bloodline as the foundation to create a new race. The Panga bloodline in the Yuan race originated from Mount Buzhou. However, Mount Buzhou had been destroyed. Even if there was Panga bloodline left in the ruins, it did not have much power. Therefore, it could only derive Yuan. Taoist Buzhou was different. Although there was not much Panga bloodline in the body of Taoist Buzhou, the boundless starry sky had transformed into a Pangu divine being. It nourished him day and night with the power of Pangu, causing the bloodline in his body to strengthen day by day. For this reason, Taoist Buzhou was born as the orthodox Panga bloodline. However, Yuan did not have such treatment. From the moment he was born, the bloodline of Pangu in his body was constantly weakened by the bloodline of the chaos demon god. When he was born, the bloodline of Pangu was at most comparable to that of a primordial grand wizard, but it could not be compared to that of an ancestral wizard. Then, the third generation of Yuan died, and his bloodline deteriorated again, giving birth to the Yuan race. At this time, the bloodline of Pangu in their bodies had been weakened to an extremely low level. Not to mention being comparable to the wizard tribe, it was already considered good to be comparable to the wizard tribe, a branch of the human tribe. However, Feng Zichen did not expect them to be strong when he created the race with the bloodline of Pangu. His fundamental purpose was to destroy the plan of the Heavenly Way. Didn't the Heavenly Way want to give birth to the Yuan race to become a stumbling block on the path of the human tribe's development? Well, Feng Zichen directly divided the Yuan race into two races, a race that was completely dominated by the bloodline of Pangu, and a race that was completely dominated by the bloodline of the chaos demon god. In this way, the plan of the Heavenly Way was self-defeating. Moreover, in order to prevent the two races from combining and giving birth to the Yuan race with the bloodline of the two races, Feng Zichen also planned to sow discord between the two races and make them enemies for generations. One belonged to the Panga divine branch, and the other belonged to the chaos demon god branch. They were simply natural enemies. Even without Feng Zichen's instigation, the two races would fight. From the moment the two races of the same origin were born, they would be mortal enemies. Wasn't this very interesting? After the two races were born, they only wanted to get rid of each other. They could not wait to form an alliance with the human tribe. Why would they choose to be enemies with the human tribe? Seeing Feng Zichen perform the mediation of good fortune, everyone immediately understood what he was planning and could not help but be amazed by his idea. However, this idea was very good, but it would not be so easy to achieve. Even if the bloodline of Pangu had been weakened countless times, it was still quite extraordinary. It would not be so easy for Feng Zichen to evolve it into a connate life form. Rumble. The power of creation gushed out wildly from Feng Zichen's body, exerting all of it on the bodies of Panga's bloodline, pushing them to evolve and transform into living beings. Unfortunately, the effect was not very ideal. Although the Panga bloodline was changing, the effect was very slow. Feng Zichen had worked hard for a long time, but only managed to give birth to a wisp of life aura. There was still a long way to go before the Pangu bloodline completely evolved into a life form. At this time, the Heavenly Way saw that its plan had failed, so it could no longer hold back. It directly activated the apocalyptic divine thunder and blasted it towards Feng Zichen. It could not attack Ziwei the Great, but it did not mean that it could not attack Feng Zichen. Compared to Ziwei the Great, Feng Zichen's merit was still a little lower. At this time, Feng Zichen was fully activating the supreme magic to mediate good fortune. He did not have much energy left to resist the apocalyptic divine thunder of the Heavenly Way. Rumble. The apocalyptic divine thunder blasted down. Every strike was equivalent to the full strength strike of a ninth heaven of chaotic essence expert. Its power was terrifying, and it emitted terrifying destructive waves. At this critical moment, the great Taoist priest's mark appeared between Feng Zichen's eyebrows. Majestic pangas, Tao, might spread out, directly weakening the apocalyptic divine thunder's power by 50%. At the same time, the human Tao divine ring appeared, once again weakening the apocalyptic divine thunder's power by 20%. The 10,000 spirit crown and the human Tao imperial insignia bloomed at the same time, emitting astonishing power. They each blocked 10% of the apocalyptic divine thunder's power. With this added together, the apocalyptic divine thunder's power had been reduced by 90%. Only 10% of its power blasted onto Feng Zichen's body, and its power could only tickle him. However, the Heavenly Way's attack was constantly increasing. Feng Zichen could easily block it now, but after a while he might not be able to. Therefore, he had to think of a way to turn Pango's bloodline into a living being as soon as possible. Thousands of thoughts appeared in his mind, and Feng Zichen quickly came up with a plan. He rolled his eyes and suddenly shouted to the onlookers, "What are you waiting for, fellow Taoists? Are you just going to watch the show from the sidelines? Could it be that Save Me and fellow Taoist Siwei are members of the Panga Divine Branch, but none of you are? If not, why would you be so indifferent when someone is messing with the inheritance of the Pangu Divine Branch? Fellow Taoists, the birth of the Yuan race is not a matter of me, Zichen, alone. It is a matter that affects the entire Pangu Divine Branch. The inheritance of the Father God cannot be messed up. The bloodline of the Father God cannot be blasphemed. In that case, what are you waiting for?" This was the plan that Feng Zichen came up with, the strategy of moral kidnapping. With his power alone, he could not induce the growth of the Panga's bloodline in a short period of time, so he would combine the power of everyone. In this way, he would definitely be able to turn the Panga's bloodline into a living being at the fastest speed. It was not difficult at all for Feng Zichen to persuade the crowd to take action. This was because the birth of the Yuan race would not mess up the inheritance of the human race, but the inheritance of the Pangu Divine Branch. Everyone present, except for Zhuani, was a member of the Pangu Divine Branch. No one could stay out of this matter. As long as Feng Zichen raised the banner of the Panga Divine Branch, even if everyone was unwilling, they would have to take action. This was because if they did not take action, they would be denying their own origins and cutting themselves off from the Pangu Divine Branch. Fellow Taoist Gauchen is right. If you don't take action now, when will you? Fellow Taoist Taiching, you are the leader of the Panga Divine Branch and have the highest seniority. Why don't you take the lead and make a statement? At this moment, Great Emperor Ziwei also turned his head and said to Saint Taiching, forcing him to make a statement. Good fellow, one person played two roles and forced Saint Taiching and everyone else to roast on the fire. Feng Zichen was really something. It was difficult for Saint Taiching to not make a statement after being forced by Great Emperor Ziwei. First of all, he was the true descendant of the Pangu Divine Branch. This identity could not be given up. Secondly, he was also the most senior existence in the Pangu Divine Branch. He had to consider the interests of the Pangu Divine Branch. Otherwise, his status would definitely be affected. Thinking to this point, Saint Taiching made a decision in his heart. He said, "Fellow Taoist Gauchen and fellow Taoist Siwei are right. Father's bloodline cannot be blasphemed. Everyone, quickly join forces with Poor Wei and help the two of you." As he spoke, Saint Taiching activated the Taiji painting and derived the power of Khanate Taiji to accelerate the evolution of the Pangu bloodline. Seeing that Saint Taiching had taken action, everyone did not hesitate anymore. They used all sorts of methods to help Feng Zichen and fellow Taoist Siwei to derive the Panga bloodline. The moment everyone joined forces, the Pangu Divine System's providence, which had originally been scattered into a ball, directly condensed into a stalwart figure that was faintly discernible behind everyone. Boom, an unimaginable power erupted and destroyed the apocalyptic divine lightning. Then it blasted onto Heavenly Tao's body without reducing its momentum, sending him back to the heavenly Tao space. On Feng Zichen's side, he had the help of everyone, especially Goddess Nuwa and Goddess Hutu, the two grandmasters of the Tao of creation. Panga's bloodline quickly evolved and vitality spread out. Soon, innate divine embryos were born to deal with the Yuan race's divine embryos. After another 100 years, the two divine embryos shook at the same time, and a rich vitality spread out. Ka ka ka. Then there was a series of cracking sounds. The divine embryos split open one after another, giving birth to two special innate races. One was born with 3 pupils and was enveloped in innate spiritual light. It was obvious that he was born from Panga's bloodline. Although the other was in human form, he had a pair of huge wings on his back. His entire body was surrounded by a murderous aura. It was obvious that he was born from the Chaos Fiend God's bloodline. Rumble. It was also at this moment that Heavenly Tao, which had been sent back to the Heavenly Tao space, appeared again. An inexplicable power hung down and turned into 2 innate divine patterns that fell toward the 2 races. This was the name that Heavenly Tao gave to the new races. Those that originated from Panga's bloodline were called the Primordial God race, while those that originated from the Chaos Fiend God race were called the Primordial Demon race. It was a very vivid name, and its origin was clear at a glance. However, Feng Zichen was not satisfied. The race that was born from Panga's bloodline was created by him. Why did the Heavenly Tao have to name it? Moreover, he did not want this race to be related to the Yuan race that did not exist at all. P.S. Please give me a guaranteed monthly ticket tomorrow. Chapter 828. At the thought of this, Feng Zichen waved his sleeves and swept out a strong gust of wind, shattering the Khanate Tao pattern that was falling towards the clan derived from Panga's bloodline. Since you were born in Mount Buzhou, you shall be called the Buzhou celestial race. Ignoring the Heavenly Tao's reaction, Feng Zichen gave the new race a name. It was the Buzhou celestial race, the celestial race that was born in Mount Buzhou. The moment the name was given, heaven and earth immediately sensed it and began to rumble. Even the unusually furious ruins of Mount Buzhou fell silent after hearing the name. Obviously, it had acknowledged the name. The Heavenly Tao saw all the strange phenomena and immediately knew that the matter was settled and there was no possibility of changing it. Therefore, the Heavenly Tao first looked coldly at Feng Zichen and then released a wave of Khanate Tao pattern that turned into a Khanate divine pattern. It represented the Buzhou celestial race. When the Khanate divine pattern fell, heaven and earth acknowledged the identity of the Buzhou celestial race. Now, there was another Khanate race in the Eldritch world. Rumble. Above the firmament, boundless luck and merit gathered and merged with the luck of the Buzhou celestial race. This was the legacy of Mount Buzhou. The Buzhou celestial race inherited Panga's bloodline and had the name Buzhou. Naturally, they could inherit the legacy of Mount Buzhou. Compared to Mount Buzhou, the Essence Demon race was not so lucky. After losing Panga's bloodline, they only had the bloodline of the Chaos Demon God in their bodies and had completely become the descendants of the Chaos Demon God. At this time, the descendants of the Chaos Demon God were not as hated by the Heavenly Tao as they were in the Primordial Age. On the contrary, their tragic situation attracted the pity of the Heavenly Tao, and it was prepared to secretly support them. However, at this time, the pity of the Heavenly Tao obviously had no effect, because the one who wanted to deal with the Essence Demon race was none other than the ruins of Mount Buzhou that gave birth to them. In terms of hatred for the Chaos Demonic Gods, who among the people present hated the ruins of Mount Buzhou more than they did. Mount Buzhou was destroyed by the corrosion of the Chaos Demonic God on the surface. But in reality, Mount Buzhou was destroyed by the corrosion of the Chaos Demonic God. With such a great enmity, the Mount Buzhou ruins hated the Chaos Demon Gods very much. They wished that they could all die. Therefore, how could the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God the primordial demon clan. Farewell in front of the ruins of Mount Buzhou. He had defended the Yuan race earlier because they had Pango's bloodline in them, but the Yuan race did not. If that was the case, why would the ruins of Mount Buzhou shelter the Prime Devil clan? He couldn't wait to kill them. Rumble. Boundless resentment gathered in the sky and surged toward the primordial demon clan, entangling them tightly. This was the resentment of Mount Buzhou, the resentment that could not be erased after its destruction. The Buzhou god clan had inherited the fate and merit left by the ruins of Mount Buzhou and could enjoy its legacy. The only thing the primordial demon clan could inherit was the resentment of Mount Buzhou. This resentment was the curse of Mount Buzhou on the chaos demonic god. It would entangle every living being of the primordial demon clan until they became primordial Daluo Jinxian or died completely. Feng Zichen could not tell what kind of effect this resentment would have on the primordial demon clan at the moment. He could only roughly tell that with the resentment of Mount Buzhou, the primordial demon clan would probably never be able to set foot on the earth in this lifetime. Mount Buzhou was the foundation of the earth and the ancestral bloodline of the untainted land. Being cursed by it, they would be hated by the entire untainted land and would never be able to set foot on the earth in this lifetime. Once they touched the earth, they would be eroded by the evil spirit of the earth, which would enter their souls and destroy all vitality. How pitiful! And this was only one of the many side effects of being cursed by Mount Buzhou. As for the rest, before Feng Zichen could see clearly, the primordial demon clan had already disappeared. Why did they disappear? Naturally, it was because the heavenly axiom was worried that they would be secretly killed by the people present if they continued to stay here. Therefore, the heavenly axiom directly used its magical power to secretly send the primordial demon clan away and use supreme means to cover their tracks, making it impossible for the people to divine their whereabouts. From this, it could be seen that the heavenly axiom was still unwilling to give up. It still pinned its hopes on the primordial demon clan, believing that they could hinder the development of the human race. What a joke! It was just the primordial demon clan. If they had not been cursed by Mount Buzhou, they might have had a chance to rise again. But now that they had been cursed by Mount Buzhou, they would never have a chance to rise again in this lifetime. It was even to the extent that whether they would be able to survive in the 3 dimensions was a question that was worth considering. Being hated by the earth and unable to set foot on the earth in this lifetime. If such a race could rise again, wouldn't it mean that the other races were useless? The heavenly axiom was too confident. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. What if the heavenly axiom had some tricks up its sleeve that it did not know about? It had to be guarded against. More preparations had to be made. Everything had to be prepared. This was the reason why Feng Zichen had not failed so far. At that thought, Feng Zichen suddenly turned to the people of the Buzhou divine clan not far away and asked, "Did you see the primordial demon clan that just left?" The first member of the Buzhou divine clan to be born heard Feng Zichen's question and hurriedly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Reporting to Godfather, we saw them." "Godfather." "That's right, Godfather." Although the Buzhou divine clan was created by everyone's joint efforts, Feng Zichen had contributed greatly. Moreover, if Feng Zichen had not extracted the Panga bloodline from the primordial demon clan, the Buzhou divine clan would not have been born, and everyone would not have worked together to create this clan. For this reason, it was not a problem to say that the Buzhou divine clan was created by Feng Zichen. It was also because of this that it was completely reasonable for the people of the Buzhou divine clan to address Feng Zichen as Godfather. No one could find fault with that. Feng Zichen did not deny that person's address. He nodded and said, "It's good that you saw them. You have to remember that they are your natural enemies. Your natural enemies. If you see them in the future, if you have the ability to kill them, do not hesitate to kill them directly. If you don't have the ability to kill them, Then avoid them, lest you fall into their hands and suffer a fate worse than death." Feng Zichen's words were not meant to frighten them, nor were they meant to deceive the Buzhou divine clan. There was a reason behind them. The two clans were indeed natural enemies. This was something that Feng Zichen had discovered by accident when he was calculating the effects of Mount Buzhou's curse on the primordial demon clan. The primordial demon clan's method of dispelling Mount Buzhou's curse was actually on the Buzhou divine clan. This was also the reason why the two clans were mortal enemies. After hearing Feng Zichen's instructions, the first person of the Buzhou divine clan did not understand, but he still said respectfully, "We will remember God Father's words and will not dare to forget them. If we meet the primordial demon clan in the future, we will definitely kill them." Afraid that the Buzhou divine clan did not understand the gravity of the situation and did not take his words to heart, Feng Zichen reminded them again and explained the reason. "Although your bloodline is different from that of the primordial demon clan, you were all born from the ruins of Mount Buzhou. It's just that you all have Pango's bloodline and were born to be loved by Mount Buzhou and received its legacy. But the primordial demon clan is different. Possessing the bloodline of the Chaos Fiend God, they were born to be disliked by Mount Buzhou and were cursed by Mount Buzhou to never set foot on the earth. The primordial demon clan was born with misfortune and should have been exterminated. But the heavens were kind and not only saved their lives, but also told them a way to dispel the curse of Mount Buzhou." At this point, Feng Zichen looked at all the Buzhou divine clan members and said, "That way is you all. As long as they devour your bloodline, the primordial demon clan will undergo an astonishing transformation and dispel the curse of Mount Buzhou in their bodies. Therefore, if you see the primordial demon clan in the future and you can't kill them, run as far as you can. Otherwise, once you fall into the hands of the primordial demon clan, you will suffer a fate worse than death. They are your natural enemies. Your two clans are destined to never coexist. Only one of you can survive, either you or them." All this information was deduced by Feng Zichen and could be confirmed to be true. It could only be said that the heavenly Tao really knew how to play games. To think that it could come up with such a method to give birth to the real primordial demon clan. If the primordial demon clan devoured the bloodline of the Buzhou divine clan and became the leader of the two clans, wouldn't they become the primordial demon clan when they grew a third eye? Unfortunately, although the heavenly Tao's plan was good, it was seen through by Feng Zichen and was destined to lose its effect. Feng Zichen didn't do anything, but an inexplicable force emanated from his body and surged in the direction of the Buzhou divine clan in the distance. Soon, it sank into their bodies and disappeared. Feng Zichen didn't do anything but set a restriction on the Buzhou divine clan members. This restriction wouldn't affect them and would only be activated when they died, melting their flesh and blood so that they would return to heaven and earth without leaving a trace. This had always been the case for the descendants of the Pangu. After death, their origin would return to heaven and earth. This was called returning to the embrace of their father. This tradition originated from the witch tribe and was one of the few virtues of the witch tribe. This was a very good tradition. Feng Zichen thought that the Buzhou divine clan should learn from the witch tribe and imitated the witch tribe's return to heaven and earth after death to set a restriction on them. In this way, the heavenly Tao's plan naturally fell apart. This time, all of the heavenly Tao's plans fell through as Feng Zichen dispelled them one by one. In this game with the heavenly Tao, Feng Zichen was ultimately superior and won the heavenly Tao. From then on, Feng Zichen had a new title, Feng Zichen, who won the heavenly Tao by half a step. After hearing Feng Zichen's words, the members of the Buzhou divine clan all paled. No one would be happy to have an enemy out of nowhere, let alone a newborn of the Buzhou divine clan. The first person of the Buzhou divine race, who was slightly older, quickly calmed down and thanked Feng Zichen respectfully. "Thank you for your guidance, Divine Father. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known that we had become the savior of others. It seems that the Buzhou divine clan will not be able to coexist with the primordial demon clan in the future. If I find the opportunity in the future, I'll make this clan disappear completely. The first half of the sentence was directed at Feng Zichen, but the second half was what he thought in his heart and didn't say out loud. However, although he didn't speak, Feng Zichen already knew what he was thinking just from the look in his eyes. He was also a decisive person with the potential to become a king. He should be the clan leader of the Buzhou celestial race. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen suddenly said, "I see that you don't have a name yet. From now on, you shall be called No, the No from Mount Buzhou. The Buzhou divine clan shall be under your command from now on." No quickly knelt down and thanked, "No, thank you, Father, for the name." Smiling, Feng Zichen first helped No up with his magic power, then picked out the second and third members of the Buzhou divine clan and named them Zhou and Shan respectively, so that they could assist No in managing the Buzhou divine clan. No from Mount Buzhou, Zhou from Mount Buzhou, and Shan from Mount Buzhou. Feng Zichen named them so casually, using local materials to save time. But he also had his own way of saying that Mount Buzhou was a very vivid name. He gave the three of them such names to commemorate Mount Buzhou. After naming the three of them, Feng Zichen pointed to the sky and plucked the supreme grade, primordial spiritual treasure seal of mountains and rivers that was still floating in midair and handed it to No. "This is your clan's primordial spiritual treasure, the seal of mountains and rivers. It is very powerful. Today I give it to you. I hope that you can keep the peace of the Buzhou divine clan with this treasure." The seal of mountains and rivers was still there, but the great spear of destruction was no longer there. It had disappeared with the disappearance of the primordial demon clan. Obviously, it had been taken away by the primordial demon clan. The innate divine first Dai Yuan gave birth to two supreme grade, primordial spiritual treasures. One was the supreme grade, primordial spiritual treasure seal of mountains and rivers nurtured by Mount Buzhou, which represented the inheritance of Pangu in his body. The other was the supreme grade, primordial spiritual treasure, great spear of destruction formed by the power of chaos and destruction, which represented the inheritance of the chaos demon god in his body. Now, first Dai Yuan's bloodline was divided into two, creating two primordial clans. It was suitable for each clan to have one primordial spiritual treasure. After doing all this, Feng Zichen still felt uneasy. After what happened just now, he realized that he had underestimated the heavenly Tao. It was also a cunning old man who was very good at scheming. If he was not careful, he would fall into his trap. To guard against the heavenly Tao, he had to add another layer of insurance. With a thought, Feng Zichen thought of an idea that would satisfy both sides. He pointed at Taoist Buzhou, who was beside Great Emperor Zhui, and said, "Buzhou, come here." Hearing this, Taoist Buzhou stepped forward and asked respectfully, "Uncle Master, what instructions do you have for me?" Feng Zichen smiled and pointed at the Buzhou divine clan in front of him. He said, "Now that I have worldly affairs to deal with, I have no time to care about this clan. Coincidentally, this clan is somewhat related to you. Therefore, I'll entrust this clan to you and let you teach them. What do you think?" Hearing Feng Zichen's words, Taoist Buzhou subconsciously wanted to refuse. P.S. Double monthly votes for today. Please give monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.